"Stop!" shouted the enraged guards. Today, the thieving kid was especially brazen. He stole some apples and a couple of pears from a local market vendor. You owe money not only to the merchant for his fruit, but also to the casino. Why do you keep running away from us? Hoping to escape, do you think you can get away from us just like that? The leader of the group of guards asked. After a long chase, they still managed to corner the kid. "Oh, come on! I'm a regular visitor. I forgot my wallet at home. I'll pay you back next time. You do remember who I am, don't you?" replied the stalker guy. "Of course, everyone here knows you're the worthless son of General Francis Grante. This isn't the first time you've been late paying off a casino owner, so you have two choices. You pay your debt right now, or you pay it off with your own hand," warned the boy by the guards. "Your offer sounds extremely tempting, so give me some time to think about it." The boy spoke thoughtfully. The guy put his hand behind his back and pulled a cat hook from a hidden pocket. Swinging the hook upward, the guy managed to climb the edge of a tall fence. "I'm sorry, but I'm not going to give you anything today. If you want my right arm, you'll have to come up here and get it yourself," shouted the guy cheerfully from the fence. "You little shit! I'm going to personally climb that fence right now and rip your ears off," the guard shouted threateningly. "Wait, that's the manner of the one. You shouldn't go in there." The guard stopped his partner from rash action. "Hunter, we'll let you go this time, but don't think you'll get off that easy tomorrow," shouted one of the guards to the boy. Suddenly, the shingles on the fence snapped, and the guy flew down into the yard of someone else's house. The landing was soft enough. The boy fell into the hands of the owner of the house. The boy bounced fearfully away from the homeowner. "I apologize. I didn't mean to break your fence and disturb your peace. I promise I'll make amends as soon as I win money at the casino." The guy turned around to run away from that yard as fast as possible. The landlord didn't like that idea, so he grabbed the guy by the scruff of the neck and threw him to the ground. "I don't want money. I want you dead." In an emotionless voice, the landlord said, "Look, you're putting a lot of importance on things that are totally not serious. Who cares if it falls off your fence into your hands? Is that a problem? I told you I'll pay for the damage," the guy exclaimed irritably. "Do you think you can get away from the prince in peace?" asked the master of the house. "What's his problem? They look pretty, but he's so vain. He thinks he's royalty," Heidi thought to herself. She was only wearing a guy's clothes, but in reality it was a girl standing in front of the owner of the house. Heidi remembered that recently news had traveled through the city that a prince of their state had come to visit them. His name was Roland Shenshin. He was a warring prince who had spent 8 years fighting overseas. He's killed over 100,000 enemies without blinking an eye. In the imperial city, he is known as a cold-blooded killer. This is some kind of misunderstanding. Your Royal Majesty, please enjoy the beautiful view of the garden, and I'll leave you to it." Heidi made another attempt to escape. The prince took out his lasso and threw the noose over the girl. Heidi lost her balance and fell to the ground. "If you're thinking of running away from me, you won't succeed. I told you I want you dead. You're not leaving here alive," said the prince, leaning over Heidi. Heidi had never been afraid of danger and did not consider herself weak. The girl jumped to her feet and knocked the prince to the ground. "Now you've certainly left me no choice. I have to kill you," warned the prince. "Oh, that's scary. If I'm going to die anyway, much better to have fun before I die," Heidi said in a cheerful voice. "If you dare to do anything indecent, you're definitely finished," once again the prince warned. "Martial Prince, what obscene things are you talking about? I don't understand. Can you explain?" The girl continued to cheer. Heidi didn't understand why she was able to fell the belligerent prince so easily. The man put up virtually no resistance to her. Had he become sick and useless? "Prince, you look scared, but I'm not a bad person. I can do you a favor." The girl untied her small pouch and pulled a pill out of it. Heidi handed the prince a pill, but he clenched his teeth tightly and refused to take it. "Scoundrel! What do you want from me?" the prince shouted angrily. After Yashan paralyzed him, the man became useless. He couldn't even get rid of a guy who wasn't skilled in martial arts. This situation extremely mortified the man. Your Royal Majesty, what do you think I'm going to do to you? Remember, I'm not an evil criminal. Do you know what they do when a patient doesn't want to take his medicine? He is fed by another person from his mouth. Would you like to try it? The prince could not allow himself to be fed medicine from his mouth by this skinny guy. The man weighed the pros and cons and opened his mouth. Your Royal Majesty! I heard someone sneaking into the manor! A guard finally came running into the backyard. Quickly get a doctor, I can't stand it any longer, ordered the prince. He felt weak all over his body and cold sweat covered his face. I thought you called me in on your case, and there's nothing interesting here. To be honest, I didn't expect this. Someone drugged you with an aphrodisiac. The warrior prince was drugged with illegal substances right in his garden. The gifted physician Louis Junger said thoughtfully, You better shut up and examine me. If you don't do it now, I promise you that as soon as I feel better, I'll deal with you, grumbled the prince irritably. Louis had no choice but to examine the prince's body. After finishing the examination, the doctor was surprised to note that the drug not only appeared harmless, but also suppressed the paralyzing poison in the prince's body. If we could find the person who gave you this drug, there's a good chance you'd recover from your paralysis, said the doctor to the prince. To relieve the stress from earlier, Heidi went to the pub. Isabel, you look absolutely stunning tonight. I'm having a hard time restraining myself from kissing you, said Heidi, touching the face of the girl sitting across from her. Suddenly, swinging the door open with his foot, an irritated man burst into the room. It took a while, but I found you, General Francis Grante said in a voice ringing with anger. Father, what are you doing here? Didn't you have to go to the dam? Don't worry about me. I'll be home for dinner, Heidi exclaimed fearfully. Yes, I was going to dam, but I had to go back. Did you know they were going to put you in jail for 2 weeks? How dare you even hang around the city wall? The father continued to shout angrily. Father, if you come any closer, I'm going to jump out this window. Heidi climbed up onto the windowsill. Look, the general's son is about to jump. It seems he finally decided to punish his son. I heard Hunter was being chased by casino mercenaries. I can't believe he's still alive. In the town square, an extraordinary commotion broke out among the ordinary people. Jump all you want. You don't know anything, but you're still getting me into trouble. I put you under house arrest, but you ran away anyway, and now you're looking for fun here in this pub, while whining like a woman. Sighing heavily, the general said. Without listening to her father's outrage, Heidi jumped into the town square and ran away. Hunter, stop! Shouted the general, starting to follow his daughter. Suddenly, a large black horse appeared in Heidi's path. You watch where you're going, or you'll kill someone! Heidi shouted and fell backward, off balance. 2 guards approached the girl and lifted her off the ground. What has that idiot gotten himself into again? The general thought to himself doomfully. General Grante, I haven't met your son before, but we've been communicating through letters for some time. Would you mind if I invited him to my estate for a cup of tea? Looking out of the carriage window, Prince Roland asked the general. Your Royal Highness, my father will go crazy if I'm not home for dinner. Heidi really didn't want to go to the prince's estate. It was unlikely he had time to forget this morning's incident. Of course, I don't mind. Do whatever you want with him, replied the general to the prince. I never thought the womanizer of the House of Grante had a deep knowledge of medicine. How did you know I was poisoned? Asked the prince as soon as the girl got into his carriage. I didn't know anything. It was just a man's instincts kicking in, Heidi replied to the prince. The girl was afraid that communication with this man would not end well for her. And where did you get those pills? Asked another question from the prince. I did a favor for a good doctor. In return, he gave me these pills, replied the girl. In the presence of the prince, she tried to act carefree, turning everything into a joke. And how did you know they would help me if you had no knowledge of medicine? The prince asked again, but without waiting for an answer, he fainted. Hey, there's no need to pretend to be weak. Or is this how you want to make me pay compensation for the damage? You're rich. Why do you need my money? Heidi exclaimed fearfully, looking at the exhausted man. The prince fell with his whole body on the girl's chest. Heidi was worried that he might realize she wasn't a boyfriend. Order the coachman to return to the manor and bring the doctor. In a weakening voice, the prince whispered. He was completely oblivious to the girl in front of him. Heidi tried to move the prince's hand away from her breast. She noticed that his fingers were very cold. It was probably because of the poison in his body. As soon as the carriage entered the royal estate, Heidi ordered that the prince be undressed and a large quantity of hot water be prepared. Dr. Lewis ran up to the girl. "Take me to the kitchen quickly," Heidi ordered the doctor. "Who are you, anyway, and what do you want in the kitchen? Are you trying to poison the food?" the doctor asked the girl. "I want to save your prince, and if you don't want to show me the kitchen, then just shut up. I'll find it myself." In an annoyed voice, the girl replied to Lewis. "No one will touch my prince in my presence." The doctor objected to the girl. "You failed. I'm not afraid of you. Forget about me and the prince, and you'd better worry about your own safety." Heidi grabbed the doctor by the cheek and pulled him toward her. "And when did you have time to poison me already?" the doctor whispered in surprise. He felt the heat spreading through his body and the pain in his joints. His arms and legs were suddenly paralyzed. "Poisoned you? You shouldn't compete with me. You haven't got milk on your lips yet," Heidi said with a smirk to the doctor. After talking to the doctor, Heidi grabbed the first guard by the shoulder and ordered him to show the kitchen immediately. Heidi explained that if they continued to delay, the prince would probably die. "Are we going to leave the doctor paralyzed like that?" the guard asked the girl. Heidi took pity on Lewis and asked the guard to take the doctor with her. "You mean I'm going to have to carry this doctor on my back now?" clarified the guard to the girl. "Yes, that's exactly what I meant. The interesting thing is, this doctor has been visiting the prince for a long time now, but he still hasn't been able to cure him. I'll teach him a lesson now. You stay here and watch me. I'm about to show you how to get the prince back on his feet." Heidi decided to leave the doctor on the doorstep of the prince's room. She didn't want him to disturb her with unnecessary talk. Walking up to the prince, the girl began to undress him. "And what are you going to do to me this time?" Frightened by the girl's actions, the prince asked. Since the man was paralyzed, he couldn't stop her. "Trust me, I promise you'll enjoy it." Leaning over the prince, said Heidi. She knew that this man was sure that the young boy in front of him. This situation amused the girl immensely. She liked to see the consternation in the prince's eyes. "What are you, a pervert? Stop or I'll call security!" screamed the prince fearfully. "Scream all you want. No one will come to your rescue," the girl said in a calm voice and continued undressing the prince. "You don't need to be afraid of anything. I just want to examine your body before I start treatment. The first thing I will do is to take care of your legs. Despite the fact that you haven't used your legs for 6 months, you've managed to retain muscle. That's impressive. Your skin is fair and smooth, even better than some women's," Heidi went on to mock Prince. "Guards!" Suddenly the prince shouted in a loud voice. At the same second, 2 guards appeared in the room. "I must have overreacted," the girl thought to herself, but it was too late. The guards had her on the ground and twisted her arms. Plucked from the hands of the guards, the girl began to beg the prince to spare her. She promised him that she would cure his feet if he would spare her life. "I have people left at home waiting for me. I also have a kitten who needs someone to take care of him. Please don't kill me," Heidi wailed. "Then shut up and continue the treatment. If you say one word, I will order your tongue to be cut out," warned the prince. "I have infused medicinal herbs, and I want to bathe your feet in this decoction. So you'll have to take off your pants. Don't worry, we're both men, so there's nothing to be embarrassed about. Besides, I'm a respected doctor," said Heidi to the prince. "I probably won't be able to do it on my own. You'll have to help me." Embarrassed, the prince said to the girl, "No, don't touch me, though. I don't want you to touch me. Tell Lewis to help me." The prince was uncomfortable with this strange fellow's touch. Well, since that's what you want. Heidi walked over to the doctor and pressed a few dots on his body. After that, the doctor began to move again. After the prince was undressed, Heidi dipped his feet in a decoction with medicinal herbs. The girl also massaged the prince's feet. Watching Heidi's actions, the prince noted to himself that the guy sitting across from him had thin hands like a girl. After a long, busy day, Heidi could finally take a relaxing bath. No sooner had the girl plunged into the hot water than the prince entered the bathroom. "Your Royal Highness, have you come to my room at this late hour seeking solace?" the girl asked the prince. She didn't like the fact that the man had decided to visit her without asking. If this continued, she would have a hard time hiding the fact that she was a girl. "My legs aren't in the best condition right now. Can you check my pulse and see if everything is okay?" asked the prince to the girl. Heidi had no choice but to honor his request. "I never thought a young lad could have such graceful arms and thin collarbones," the prince thought to himself. "Your Majesty, it is time to take the medicine. Starting today, you must drink 2 cups of this infusion every day." Heidi handed the prince 2 cups of herbal infusion. "I've made some inquiries about you. You frequent brothels, but you've never met a girl. This begs the question. Why?" Unexpectedly, the prince asked the girl. "I prefer to savor a woman's beauty from a distance." Heidi winked at the prince. A servant entered the room and announced that poisonous snakes had been delivered to the manor. "Yay! The poisonous snakes have arrived!" Heidi shouted joyfully. "Because of you helping me, I want to give you something in return. I heard from Lewis that you are interested in various poisons, so I decided to give you some rare snakes," explained the prince to the girl. Heidi pulled one snake out of the box to get a closer look. Suddenly the reptile bit her finger. "We have to be careful!" the prince exclaimed fearfully. He grabbed the girl's hand with a sharp movement and sucked the snake venom from her finger. "Why are you doing this?" Heidi asked, surprised. Spitting the poison onto the floor, the prince passed out. Heidi managed to pick up the man so he wouldn't accidentally hit his head. When the prince opened his eyes, he saw a healer boy, a snake in his hands. "Your Majesty, meet my new pet Sai," introduced the snake to Heidi. "Decided to keep that poisonous snake as a pet? Doesn't she scare you?" the prince wondered. "Don't worry, I've developed immunity to all poisons. You wouldn't have to faint if you didn't decide to suck the poison out, and I wouldn't need to take care of you afterward," the girl explained to the prince. "I'm very curious as to why you did that," Heidi asked the prince. Roland decided to remain silent. He himself didn't understand why he had sucked the poison from this strange guy's finger. "Anyway, it's not the only thing I'm dissatisfied with. If you want to heal your legs, then show me some sincerity. Let's make a deal with you. I'll do acupuncture treatments, massages, and for each such action, you'll reward me," Heidi suggested. "It doesn't have to be money. I wouldn't mind if you brought my favorite courtesans here." "If you get bored during treatment, you can socialize with these girls. I can even give you some advice if you're not sure who to choose." "You've been working hard all this time, so I just wanted to reward you, but how dare you thoughtlessly approach me with such obscene ideas?" The prince was indignant. "Your Royal Majesty, you should not think that all courtesans are fallen women. Many of them are elegant, educated, and very polite." Heidi began to justify herself. Roland was overwhelmed with indignation. He didn't want to argue with this guy anymore. The prince turned his wheelchair around and went to his room. In the evening, the prince suggested that Heidi take a walk in the park. Roland thought the boy should get some air. He had been staying at his manor for several days and had hardly left the house. Suddenly, a man with a sword appeared in front of them and swung to strike. Heidi covered the prince with her body. "Who are you?" asked the prince to the man with the sword. "I came here for a doctor," the man explained to him. "There is no doctor here, only the prince and his close friend." In a ringing voice, the girl exclaimed, "What close friend? What are you talking about?" The strange kid never ceased to amaze Roland. "I'm sacrificing my reputation for you. Appreciate it," Heidi exclaimed. "You don't fool me!" The man with the sword shouted and rushed toward the prince and Heidi. Heck, I'm just an innocent, law-abiding citizen. I don't have any bad habits other than visiting various bars and brothels. Why do you need me? Heidi screamed. Her voice sounded frightened. Be careful, said Heidi to the prince and drew his sword. He instantly deflected the attacker's blow. As for a paralyzed man, you move pretty well, the girl remarked. The attacker pulled a shuriken from his breast pocket. The prince ordered Heidi to save herself. The girl crouched next to Roland's wheelchair. Heidi had no idea why the mercenary needed her. They wouldn't be able to escape this man for long. The prince had been under the influence of the poison for over a year, and soon he would be exhausted. Heidi needed to think of something immediately. What a disappointment. All that's left of the legendary bloodthirsty prince is a mangled man. Go to hell, exclaimed the mercenary, and wounded the prince in the chest. Heidi took her prepared poison tubes out of her pocket and blew into them. The smoke was thick and poisonous. Inhaling the poisonous smoke, the mercenary lost control of his body, so Heidi managed to disarm him by hitting him in the head with a club. When they returned to the manor, Heidi dressed the prince's wounds. She asked Roland why he had risked his life for her. You're my doctor. How could I do otherwise? If that mercenary had killed you, who would have treated my paralyzed legs? Roland asked the girl. And I did it also because I like you, Roland confessed abruptly. What did you just say? Do you like me? It's just a doctor-patient relationship between us, isn't it? The girl questioned in surprise. One of his guards approached the prince and told him that they had found the royal mark on the body of a mercenary. He was sent by someone from the royal palace. How could someone dare to kill my doctor? We need to find that person immediately. He most likely wants to harm me. The prince angrily exclaimed. You have to help me get to the carriage. I need to go to the imperial city, said Roland to the girl. Before leaving, Roland promised Heidi that he would put 2 guards on her for her safety. He also asked the girl to return to her home. Heidi was glad that she was finally rid of the prince. Now she could enjoy a carefree life again. Heidi didn't want to go home. The first thing she did was rush to her friends at the brothel. The girl confided in her that they had a new courtesan. Heidi demanded to be brought to her as soon as possible. The courtesans whispered among themselves that this girl was very charming and attractive. She should find a rich patron as soon as possible. This girl's name is Ingrid Bay. I've heard that name somewhere before. Heidi thought to herself as she looked at the girl. This is our new girl. This is her first appearance since fate brought her to me. We made plans to find her a rich patron today. Mrs. Goozle, the owner of the brothel, told Heidi. How dare you put the general's daughter up for auction? Get your filthy hands off my sister. Who gave you permission to kidnap my sister and peddle her in a brothel? Heidi shouted loudly. We've had you hundreds of times, and this is the first I've heard of you having a sister. Everyone knows you're the general's only child. Are you not deceiving me by any chance? Mrs. Goozle asked Heidi. Who cares what I was telling? They could have been made-up stories. But enough about that. I'm taking my sister and no one can stop me. Heidi announced in a loud voice and took Ingrid's hand. Guards! Get that bully out of here and never let him in again! Shouted Mrs. Goozle. And I have guards, too, Heidi exclaimed and called out to the 2 bodyguards assigned to her by the prince. Suddenly, a man ran up to the girl and grabbed her by the throat. The man did not have time to do much harm to the girl as rocks flew at him. How dare you touch my man right in an imperial city? Heidi heard the prince's voice. Heidi knelt down in front of the prince and thanked him for his help. Your royal majesty, this woman has decided to trade the sister of your personal physician. You must restore justice for us. Heidi exclaimed. The girl's eyes filled with tears. The girl tried with all her might to sympathize with the prince. How about you put this brothel in my hands? Heidi suggested. Don't think that you won't get anything in return. Just recently, I learned new massage techniques that can speed up metabolism and blood circulation. These techniques also strengthen the spleen and dry up oily skin. Also, massage can restore paralyzed legs. Deal, replied the prince to the girl and shook her hand firmly. Ingrid was not really Heidi's sister. The girl remembered hearing that name from her mother when she was a little younger. Ingrid was from the same ethnic group as her mother, so Heidi had to take care of her. "Did you like that girl, Ingrid?" In the evening, after dinner, the prince asked Heidi. "Sure, why? Are you trying to take her away from me?" Heidi asked, chin up. "I even heard that you set aside a separate room for that girl and helped her take a bath. This unexpected show of care surprised even me," said the prince to the girl. "I have absolutely no idea what you mean by that," Heidi exclaimed. "I just wondered if you'd decided to settle down and take this girl as your wife." "You know, it doesn't make any difference, but I want to warn you, I won't let anyone touch Ingrid, not even you." With a challenge, the girl replied to the prince. "You misunderstood my words. I'm implying that you should focus your attention on my treatment. I don't want you to be infatuated with some lady or thinking about your upcoming wedding." The next day, Heidi gathered all the courtesans in the courtyard of the brothel and announced to them that she was running the house from that day forward. "If you don't want to stay here, I will give you some money and give you the gift of freedom. Those who stay with me, I will never treat badly," Heidi said in a loud voice. The girl noticed that the prince had arrived in the square. He watched silently from the side. Only a few of the girls left the brothel. The rest agreed to work for Heidi. They thought Heidi would make a great supervisor. "I'll leave the brothel to my accountant and only come here to pick up the profits." "Isn't that great?" rejoiced the girl to herself. On the first floor, near the stairs, Heidi ran into the prince. She had no idea why he hadn't left for his mansion yet. "I've noticed that lately you've been ignoring me. Have you decided to take advantage of me and dump me?" Roland asked the girl in a formidable voice. Even though the prince was in a wheelchair, he still looked intimidating. The girl involuntarily took a step back, but tripped over the threshold and began to fall on her back. The prince grabbed the girl's arm to keep her from falling, but the forces were unequal, and he flew out of his chair and fell on top of the girl. "You know, I just now noticed how long your eyelashes are. I've never seen such long eyelashes on a man," said Roland, hovering over the girl. "Could it be that of all the men in the imperial palace, it was the prince who fell in love with me?" Heidi thought to herself in surprise. "I know I have quite attractive looks, but I don't think you should give a man compliments like that." Heidi decided to turn the situation into a joke. "Will you shut up?" In a displeased voice, the prince exclaimed. "If you keep making jokes like that, I promise I won't spare you next time." The prince squeezed Heidi's face painfully. Heidi helped the prince into his wheelchair and asked a favor. She knew Ingrid was quite attractive and liked many men. The girl asked the prince to introduce a couple of guards to Ingrid. The prince didn't hesitate to agree to help the girl. "You agreed too easily. Are you really up to something?" Heidi asked the prince with some suspicion. The girl didn't know that the prince had had an unpleasant conversation with his brother the emperor a couple of days ago. The brother was puzzled as to why Roland was still unmarried. "I already have several children and you're still single. It won't be long before there will be bad rumors about you. Be honest with me, do you really not have a single girl in mind?" the emperor asked Roland. "If that's the case, and you don't have a lover, I think I need to help you. I promise to find you some concubines in as little as a month." The emperor exclaimed joyfully. "So you don't want your brother to find you a bride? Would you like me to help you find concubines? Tell me what type you're interested in, and I'll choose a few for you," Heidi said thoughtfully as she listened to the prince's story. "What if I told you I liked Ingrid?" asked the prince. "Are you joking again?" Heidi laughed. "What if it's true? I recently realized that I'm not interested in empty beauties. I need a girl with intelligence and soft character," replied the prince to the girl. After a few days in the brothel, Heidi decided to return home. As she passed the square, she heard a noise and shouting. Heidi shooed the gawkers away and saw a pretty girl. She was selling herself to cover the cost of her father's funeral. Suddenly, the girl clutched at the hem of Heidi's outer garment and begged for her help. "Sir, please buy me. I promise to do anything you ask." Bitter tears flowed down the girl's cheeks. "How can you ask me for help? Do you have any idea who I am?" "My name is Hunter. I'm a notorious womanizer of the imperial city. Do you have any idea what could be waiting for you? Heidi asked the girl and gently touched her face. Mr. Grante, how can you molest a young girl in broad daylight? The law says you should get 300 strokes of the cane, shouted a young man from the crowd. Are you out of your mind or are you blind? Didn't you see that girl throwing herself at me? I have a whole brothel of beautiful women for every taste. She's pretty enough, but she's dressed in rags and dirty. Why would I hit on a girl like that in public? And you can't fool me. I've already figured out your deception. Heidi turned to the girl. Heidi walked over to the body of the girl's supposedly dead father, and she jumped him. The man noisily let the air out of his lungs. Ouch, that hurts, howled the man. The people present in the square gasped loudly. They were surprised that Heidi could recognize a lie. Mr. Grante, I apologize for falsely accusing you. The man bowed before Heidi. The girl rubbed her chin thoughtfully. Someone was trying hard to hurt her. First, someone had sent a mercenary with a sword to her, and now he wanted to frame her. If she didn't figure it out on the spot, she'd probably spend the evening in jail. The next day, the girls handed Heidi an invitation from Mrs. Barbara. The woman invited Heidi to her house for a banquet. The girl was extremely surprised by this invitation. For years, Mrs. Barbara had been in conflict with the Grante family. It could be a trap, but I should still go to see what she's up to, Heidi decided to herself. Heidi decided to take Ingrid to the reception. Who's that girl next to the general's son? They say it's his cousin from his mother's side. He even raised Mrs. Goozel's house for her, whispered the guests at the banquet. Brother, I'm extremely glad that you accepted my invitation. Did you come with Ingrid? I heard from my uncle that she's a real beauty, and it seems he wasn't lying. On the doorstep, Heidi met her cousin Veronica. Heidi sent Ingrid off to explore the house, and she went in search of her uncle. She wanted to say hello to him. My dear nephew, you happened us all with your attractive looks. Uncle was delighted with Heidi's beauty. Mr. Grante, something has happened to Lady Veronica and Ingrid. Please follow me into the courtyard, whispered Heidi in the servant's ear. The girl had no choice but to follow him. A servant led Heidi to one of the rooms. The girl heard a familiar odor. Someone had sprayed aphrodisiac in this room. When Heidi entered the room, she saw her second cousin, Sophia. The girl was lying unconscious. Heidi praised herself for being smart. She'd taken a pill she'd made herself earlier in the morning that would neutralize any narcotic drugs. Why is this girl here? Was she really set up? She was drugged on purpose. That much is clear right away. Did the maid bring me here hoping that I would get intoxicated and faint, too? Heidi thought to herself. I just got a report that someone broke into the house. A furious Mrs. Barbara flew into the room, with several security men behind her and just a huge number of gawkers. Look at this! A known womanizer is in my daughter's room. How could he touch my daughter with his dirty hands and besmirch her pure name? Mrs. Barbara continued to shout. You must take responsibility for what happened. We'll choose the right day, and you'll marry my daughter. I didn't do anything to her. And who are you anyway to force me to marry her? Heidi objected to the woman. Mom, please stop yelling at Mr. Grante. It was all my idea. Mr. Grante and I are at an age for marriage. I just want to marry him. Suddenly, Sophia's voice came up. The girl had time to come to her senses. Okay, wait. Give me time to analyze the situation. Do I understand correctly? My cousin wants to form an alliance with a womanizer like me? I mean, that makes absolutely no sense. Heidi refused to believe what was happening. You're absolutely not a womanizer. You're the best person in this world I've ever met. Sophia walked over to Heidi and took her hand firmly. I'm sorry, but my maids are more attractive than you. What makes you think I have feelings for you? Heidi asked her cousin. The girl realized that there was some kind of show being played out in front of her right now. It was unclear why. I don't know anything. I like you, and I want to get engaged to you, Sophia replied. How quickly things happen in your life. Before you even get here, you're already going to get engaged to that girl. The prince appeared in the room and said to Heidi, "It's all my bloody charm. Absolutely no idea what I'm going to do about it. But I've already explained that I'm not interested in Sophia. I absolutely don't understand why she keeps pushing me," replied the girl to the prince. "Hunter, don't leave me. If you leave me, you'll leave our baby too," the girl exclaimed loudly. "That's one beautiful lie!" Heidi marveled to herself. "You lie, but don't go overboard. Tell everyone how you and I could have a baby," Heidi said irritably, taking Sophia by the chin. The girl was pissed off by the situation. She had been set up several times before in such a primitive way. "You are a heartless man! You must marry me, or your child and I will live in shame, and I can't bear that!" Sophia screamed and slammed her head against the wall with all her might. "Silly girl, why did you hurt yourself because of that idiot? You can marry whoever you want if you promise not to hurt yourself anymore." Mrs. Barbara rushed to her daughter and began to comfort her. "Stop putting on this show for the people around you. Marry whoever you want. I don't want to be the father of your child. Dr. Lewis happens to be here. Have him examine you and confirm your pregnancy," said Heidi to the girl. A few minutes later, Lewis confirmed Sophia's pregnancy. The girl was 2 months pregnant. Sophia fell at the prince's feet to ask him for a fair trial, but the latter surprisingly summoned the guards. "You are not only deceiving my healer, but me as well. The fact is that 2 months ago, Hunter was locked up at my estate outside of town for treatment of my feet. He couldn't see you during that time. Your child is by someone else." The prince explained to the girl. Heidi's uncle appeared out of nowhere and begged the prince for mercy. He was worried about his daughter and feared that she would be put in prison. "My dear uncle, you should also take the punishment along with your daughter. As the saying goes, families should always stick together," Heidi exclaimed. The girl was extremely pleased with herself. She was able to get even with her father's sworn enemies. Now her father would be more favorable to her. But Heidi's dreams were not destined to come true. Her father was furious. Heidi had been told that she owned a brothel and had gotten into trouble several times before. Her father demanded of Heidi that she find a wife as soon as possible. He didn't like the fact that his son was always getting into scandals. A married guy is less likely to attract that kind of attention. "Ingrid, I need to find a fake wife ASAP." Welcome to Heidi's girlfriend. "But how can you marry another girl? You're a girl yourself," Ingrid said unexpectedly. "Keep quiet about it. Everyone must think I'm a guy." "By the way, how did you guess I was a girl?" Heidi asked, surprised. "But you're such a cutie. You just can't be a guy." Ingrid gently rubbed Heidi's cheeks. "Look, what if I married you? That way no one would slip me a spy, and the men around you would stop hitting on you." An unexpected thought struck Heidi. "Let's get engaged first. That should work for a while. I don't want to promise you much because I hope to meet someone I love soon," replied Ingrid to the girl. A couple days later, an engagement ceremony was held. The prince was also present at the engagement ceremony. He was always dissatisfied with something and drank one drink after another. Returning to her room in the evening, Heidi suddenly ran into the prince. The girl was drunk, so she couldn't stay on her feet and fell into Roland's lap. "And who are you?" Heidi asked in a drunken voice, and gently stroked the prince's face. "Who do you think I am? Maybe I'm your adorable bride." The prince grumbled unhappily. "No, you're not her. Your voice sounds like that of Prince Charming, but he must have gotten drunk and gone home a long time ago," mumbled Heidi. "Wait, so you're the prince? Why didn't you leave?" Heidi exclaimed and jumped to her feet. "I am very curious as to why you married Ingrid," asked the prince to the girl. "It's simple here. I like attractive girls. Why shouldn't I marry Ingrid? I've noticed lately that I like— Anyway, never mind." Heidi wanted to confess her feelings to the prince, but remembered in time. "Okay, I've been talking to you guys. I should go to bed. I'm really tired tonight." In a drunken voice, Heidi muttered and turned around to leave. The prince grabbed the girl by the sleeve of her outer garment and ordered her to stop. My guards have already gone home, so I have decided to stay at your house. You must provide me with lodging for the night," demanded the prince. Sighing heavily, Heidi lifted the prince into her arms and carried him to her room. Heidi woke up in the same bed with the prince. Heidi had forgotten that she had personally put him to bed with her that night. "What are you doing in my bed? Were you really trying to hit on me?" Heidi exclaimed in surprise. "This is absurd! You brought me here yourself!" objected the prince. "As you know, I'm a notorious womanizer, and it wouldn't bother me much if someone found out about it. But what happens if word gets out about you?" Heidi asked with a wry smile. "Then you'll be in big trouble," the prince warned the girl. "You know what I was thinking. We can make a deal with you. Take me back to your estate, away from my father and fiancé. I promise to keep quiet about this incident." Heidi wanted to get as far away from her father's home as possible. The prince's estate was the best option. Arriving at the prince's estate, Heidi wanted to go to bed, but suddenly the prince rode into the room in his wheelchair. The man told the girl that his legs hurt and asked her to look at them. Heidi tangled herself tightly in the blanket and walked over to the prince. She couldn't let him see her in her nightgown. "Your Royal Majesty, I have noticed that my treatment has been of little help to you lately. You should take more responsible care of your body." Heidi was indignant as she groped the prince's feet. "Calm down. I just had a cold recently, so I missed a couple appointments of your medicine. I promise it won't happen again." In a soft voice, the prince promised the girl, "I'd like you to continue to take care of me," Roland admitted. Heidi was extremely embarrassed by the conversation with the prince. Their conversation resembled that of two lovers. The next day, the guard brought a letter intended for Hunter. He said that the letter had been given to him by a beggar at the gate. The girl wanted to take the letter, but the prince intercepted it. "Dear sweet Hunter, it's been 2 weeks since we last saw each other, and it feels like a decade. I miss you madly." Roland began to read the letter aloud. "You're like poison. I absolutely cannot forget about you. I'm constantly reminded of that night. Being separated from you makes me in unbearable pain. You're my antidote. I would like to see you as soon as possible." "Who is the man who wrote you this letter?" After finishing reading it, the prince asked the girl. Heidi didn't know what to answer. She herself didn't know who the letter was from. Behind her, the girl heard the guard's voice again. He said that the beggar had handed the letter to Hunter again. This time it was Lady Veronica. She was inviting Hunter to take a boat ride with her. The last letter made Heidi extremely happy because she finally had a chance to leave the prince's estate. "I don't mind my healer going for a boat ride, but I'll go with him," the prince said in a voice that made it clear that he could not be persuaded. Along with the prince, Dr. Lewis went to the pond. Veronica and Ingrid were already waiting for them on the shore. Heidi walked over to Ingrid and patted her cheeks. She had to pretend to miss her fiancé. Roland and his attending physician, Lewis, remained on the shore, while Heidi and the girls got into the boat. Ingrid wanted very much to swim to the middle of the pond. There were big white water lilies growing there. The boatman warned the girls that the boat might rock a little from side to side. They had to be very careful. While everyone was absorbed in the beauty of the lilies, the boatman shoved Heidi in the back. She lost her balance and fell into the water. Heidi felt someone grab her legs and pull her to the bottom, so the girl began to slowly go underwater. When Heidi went under the water, she saw the prince swim up. The girl felt her strength leaving her, and she began to lose consciousness. Heidi woke up to someone giving her CPR. "What are you doing?" exclaimed Heidi, pushing the prince away from her. "Dear brother, you shouldn't swear at the prince. If it wasn't for his heroism, there's no telling what would have happened to you." Veronica stepped up to the prince's defense. When Heidi calmed down a little and came to her senses, she said that the boatman had pushed her into the water. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw him run off toward the woods. "By the way, when I fell into the water, someone started drowning me. He was wearing a pendant. I managed to take it off. Thanks to this jade pendant, we'll be able to find the culprit." The girl demonstrated her trophy to the audience. Turning her head to the right, Heidi noticed the prince standing on his feet. "Sir, your legs. How are you feeling?" Heidi asked, surprised. I didn't notice myself getting back up on my feet. I was too nervous about your fall into the water. My blood vessels dilated. My ability to walk returned. Irritated, the prince replied to the girl, I think you're deceiving me. We are not in a fairy tale. A person cannot just walk if he is paralyzed. Emotional shock won't even help. You probably started walking again long before that, said Heidi to the prince. Answer me. When did you get on your feet? Demanded the girl. I don't remember, maybe yesterday, maybe the day before, replied the girl to the blushing prince. So why didn't you tell me that? Or do you think I am your toy and you can dispose of me as you wish? The girl resented. The prince wanted to say that he wished his healer was by his side as long as possible, but he couldn't. There were too many people around. He didn't want any rumors about him. His brother was already worried that he was still single. Since Heidi did not hear the prince answer her question, she stomped her feet loudly and went home. She was hurt that the prince had hidden the fact of his recovery from her. Prince stepped over his pride to go home to Heidi. Look who's here to visit us. It's not a paralyzed warrior prince. What brings his royal highness to my humble abode? Heidi grumbled unhappily. I need to ask you something. I've been interested in the healing arts as of late. I wasn't sure if the area colon in front of me was really an area colon, replied the prince to the girl. Roland took out a small box and opened it. At the bottom of the box was a golden-colored plant. That's him. Heidi sighed. She had never seen this plant in person, only in pictures and encyclopedias. This plant was extremely rare. I've heard that this plant is extremely effective and valuable. It can be used to cure many serious diseases. But you see, I don't need it right now. I thought this plant might come in handy for you, told the girl by the prince. You won't be able to bribe me with Ariel Kalan. Heidi turned sharply away from the prince. She wanted to keep the remnants of her pride intact, but deep down, the girl really wanted to get her hands on this gift. You won't believe this. I found just a huge amount of dried ginseng and snow white lotus in my cellar. They are often used in the preparation of medicines. If you're not interested, I'll give the ginseng and lotus to Louis. No need to give those boxes to Louis. I could use them too. Heidi couldn't resist the ginseng and white lotus. But don't think I've forgiven you for lying to me. I will forgive you in the event that you promise to fulfill one request of mine, said the girl to the prince. Help me find the owner of this jade pendant. I want to know who tried to kill me. The girl held out the jewelry removed from the criminal's neck to the prince. A few minutes later, one of the guards informed the prince that jade jewelry was for sale in a little-known jewelry shop. Roland and Heidi decided to go there. Excuse me, was this pendant bought from you? The girl showed the seller the jade pendant. The woman told her that it was a special piece of jewelry only for the most important customers. She remembered that this pendant was bought by Mrs. Laura. For a small fee, the saleswoman agreed to take her visitors to Mrs. Laura. The seller knocked at the door of Mrs. Laura's house for a long time, but she was in no hurry to open it. Well, since there's no one here, it's just the two of us and we'll take a look around, said the prince and kicked the door with his foot. Mrs. Laura lay in the middle of the room. The woman was dead. The saleswoman screamed in fright and jumped out of the house. Heidi and the prince leaned over Mrs. Laura. Feeling the body, Roland noted that the woman had been killed recently. Her body was warm. Looking at the girl's face, Heidi realized that Mistress Laura and the boatman were one and the same person. That girl didn't kill herself. She was murdered. And I think the person who ordered me to be pushed into the water killed her when he realized I could find her by that jade pendant. Who would benefit from my death? Heidi asked, surprised. I don't think your enemies want to kill you. It's more likely they want to hurt me through you, Roland said thoughtfully. I am a prince, and I have many enemies among the nobility. None of them want my recovery. They can't approach me because of the guards, so they decided to attack you. If you die, I will be confined to a wheelchair for the rest of my days. But I think they're too late. You're already standing on your own 2 feet, said Heidi. Suddenly, several men in black masks burst into the room. They held sharp blades in their hands. Roland called out to the guards, but no one answered his call. You don't have to call out. No one will answer you. But don't worry. You and your guards will soon meet in hell, the masked man said with a merry chuckle. A few seconds later, the men in black suits pounced on the prince as if on cue. After fending off the first kick with his foot, Roland managed to snatch a sword from one of the criminals. There was a clang of metal. Roland was fearlessly repelling his opponent's blows. The girl decided to help the prince. She began to slowly spray poisonous smoke near the criminals. The attackers realized that the girl also carried danger. They rushed towards her with swords drawn. The girl was unable to dodge the attackers, so she was wounded in the shoulder. Having dealt with all his opponents, the prince picked Heidi up on his arm and hurried to the nearest healing center. Roland saw that the girl was unconscious, so he decided to stop and quickly bandage her wound. If she continued to lose so much blood, he wouldn't have time to get her to a doctor. The prince began to take off the girl's outer garments. When he reached her underwear, Roland stood there in surprise. "It's not a guy, it's a girl!" When the girl opened her eyes, she saw Roland sitting beside her. The man was applying ointment to his wounds. "Good morning, by the way. I found out your little secret." Smiling, the prince said to the girl, "What have you done to me? Why am I without clothes?" The girl screamed, frightened. "It was an emergency. I had to undress you. If I hadn't stopped the bleeding, you'd be dead by now. Don't worry, I've been through many battles, so I have experience in first aid," said the prince to the girl. "I was surprised when I realized you were a girl. A lot of things became clear to me. I wondered for a long time why a guy would have such smooth skin, long eyelashes, and pink lips. The only thing I can't understand is why you hide your gender. If you don't want to, you don't have to tell me. But you're a girl, so you can't stay on my estate. It's necessary for the sake of your own reputation." "Do you really want to send me home? Don't you have enough money to feed one person? Besides, I was injured because of you," the girl exclaimed. "You don't want to go home to that extent? But why?" wondered the prince. "You see, my father is old. If he finds out I've been injured, he'll be very worried. I'm afraid that his weak heart won't be able to bear such worry," Heidi explained. "Okay, I can leave you at the manor and keep your secret, but you'll owe me and you'll repay me someday," the prince warned the girl. The prince's mansion had exquisite food, so within a few days Heidi's wound had almost healed. She wanted to stay here as long as possible. She didn't want to go home because her grumpy father was waiting for her. The beautiful Viola arrived at the prince's estate. "You must be Mr. Hunter Grante? I didn't expect to see you here. I thought you had been back home for a while," said Viola, walking up to Heidi. "My name is Viola Jones. I am His Majesty's bride. It is an honor to meet you." The girl introduced herself. "And the prince turns out to have a girlfriend," Heidi marveled. "I've heard that you've been here for quite some time. If people in the city find out that the infamous Mr. Grante is lingering at the prince's mansion, they might think that His Majesty has a favorite rather than a minion," Viola said thoughtfully. "I don't understand. Are you trying to kick me out of here? I'm a guest of the prince, and no matter what our relationship is, you have no right to tell me what to do." Heidi was indignant. "Your Royal Highness, good afternoon," Viola suddenly exclaimed, looking behind Heidi's back. "Has our warrior prince decided to finally show up here?" Heidi asked in a quarrelsome voice. Roland had absolutely no idea what he had done to the girl and why she was talking to him so angrily. "Who are you and what are you doing here?" asked Roland to Viola. The girl told him that she came to him with a birthday card from her father. The prince replied to Viola that she could leave the card with the servants and not disturb him. "You don't remember me? Your mother arranged for us to be engaged. We grew up together for a long time, and your mother loved me," the girl explained to Roland. "Sir, I think I am superfluous here, and I am in a hurry to leave you," said Heidi to the prince. The girl was uncomfortable watching the two of them interacting. "Hunter, wait," exclaimed the prince. "Your Highness, you don't need to worry about that pompous womanizer. Instead, you'd better escort him out as soon as possible," Viola advised the prince. "Mr. Grante is my guest. Why should I kick him out at your will? None of your family members came to see me when I was sick. As soon as I recovered, you decided to visit me immediately. Roland was indignant. You better take care of yourselves first before you try to chase my guest away. Roland asked the guards to show Viola where the exit from his manor was. Roland found Heidi on the terrace. The girl was resting in a hammock. She was extremely indignant and annoyed. Heidi would never have thought that the prince had a fiancé. She thought Roland was a useless war machine. Where did he manage to find a bride? Roland had already called the girl's name several times, but she was in no hurry to answer him. Heidi was offended. The prince walked over to the hammock and began to sway it from side to side. Your Highness, why are you wasting your precious time on me? You should be spending more time with your fiancé. Heidi had no choice but to speak to the prince. It was unlikely he would back off from her. What bride? That's what she thought. When I was little, my mom used to jokingly wed me to other little girls. Viola, on the other hand, is so stupid that she took it seriously, explained the prince to the girl. Wait, are you jealous of me? Me jealous? You've got to be kidding me, right? Heidi objected to the prince. Well, since you're not jealous of me, then why are you so upset? Roland brought his face closer to the girl and raised an eyebrow questioningly. A servant ran out onto the terrace and said that there had been an incident at the suburban military camp. A spy had sneaked into the camp. The guards have managed to capture him and are waiting for the prince to interrogate him. The prince apologized to Heidi and went off to deal with matters of national importance. The girl knew that this evening and night the prince was unlikely to return home. The next morning, Heidi woke up in the prince's arms. The girl was only interested in two questions. When did the prince turn around, and why was she sleeping in his arms? Heidi tried to pull free, but the prince only hugged her tighter. Your Highness, what are you doing here? The girl asked the prince. You lit the fire first. I only reciprocate it, replied Roland to the girl. So you want me to put it out? Heidi asked, and tried again to push the prince away from her. A servant burst into the room without knocking. He had to get the prince the latest news from the military camp. The astonished servant froze on the threshold. The servant quickly shut the door of the room and hurried away. He told himself that he had not seen anything, that he had only imagined it. I wonder why I'm getting a bad feeling, Heidi thought to herself fearfully. Roland, it has come to my attention that you are in close contact with General Grante's son. Is that true? Remember, General Grante is a respected man. You should not mess with his son. Reprimanded his brother, the emperor. But I can't understand how it happened. You told me the other day that you fell in love with a girl. Didn't things work out with her? Don't worry about me. I do love the girl. The prince reassured his brother. That's good, since I've learned that the general's son is going to marry some Ingrid. It's unlikely you'll get anywhere with him. Relieved, the emperor sighed. You showed up at home after all? Remembered where you live? The general was indignant, looking at his prodigal son. It's good to have you home. I think we should stop with your engagement. You should marry that girl, said Heidi to her father. I don't understand. You want to play the wedding right now, but our engagement is just a cover. You know you won't have grandchildren, right? Reminded the girl to her father. There are people in town talking about your relationship with the prince. You need to marry Ingrid right now. You need to stop these unseemly rumors. On top of that, think of Ingrid's reputation. Don't you ever think about the light you've put her in? His father continued to insist. I should think it over well. You can't rush into something like this. Let me at least prepare myself mentally, the girl asked her father. One of his guards came to the general and announced that a prince had come to see them. He wanted to see his son, Hunter. The whole town is talking about this scandal. How dare he come here? The general was indignant. The guard explained to him that many soldiers had been injured during the clashes, so the prince needed Mr. Hunter's help. Father, the prince came here for an emergency reason. You can't refuse him, Heidi said in a quiet voice. The general let his son go with the prince, but asked him to return home as soon as he finished treating the soldiers. He didn't want the unseemly rumors to continue to spread through the city. Lewis explained to Heidi, who had arrived at the infirmary, that the soldiers sent to gather information about the enemy had been ambushed on the way back. They had all returned wounded. The surgeon at the camp immediately dressed their wounds, but they were only getting worse. As Heidi looked over the injured, she noticed that their blood was an unnatural color. It looked like the attackers had used poison on the weapons, and it was now eating away at the soldiers' wounds. The surgeon should have washed the poison off first before dressing the wounds. Heidi asked Lewis for some silver needles. Watching Heidi's manipulations, Roland noted to himself that inviting her into the camp was a good idea. The girl knew at once that the soldiers were poisoned. After 4 hours, Heidi finally managed to sit down. She was able to treat all the soldiers' wounds for poison. The least injured warrior entered the infirmary and announced that the enemies had attacked them. Suddenly, the warrior pulled a white pollen from his pocket and threw it at the girl's face. With a weakening voice, the girl asked the prince to prepare an herbal bath for her as soon as possible. It was likely that the warrior had used paralyzing incense. A few hours later, Lewis reported to the prince that the guards had managed to capture one of the spies. They had also gotten a lot of useful information from him about their enemies. Heidi came into the room. She was feeling much better after her herbal bath. The girl told the prince that she needed to return home as soon as possible. If she is gone long enough, her father may come here with his army. She leaves the camp to protect the prince. Heidi, if you suddenly want your true name back, I promise to help you do so. The prince promised the girl. Thank you. I really hope so. I've done a lot of favors for you. Now you owe me. Don't try to fool me, replied Heidi to the prince. Entering the courtyard of her house, Heidi saw her cousin Sophia accompanied by her companion. Sophia, is it really you? You're the one the prince imprisoned. I'm surprised to see how quickly you were released. What do you want in my house? Are you still looking for a father for your child? Heidi asked her cousin. I was able to get out of prison so soon thanks to consort Meriden. I thought about you a lot while in prison. I came here to apologize for what happened. Sophia explained to Heidi. By the way, consort wants you to help her with something. She's heard that you're an extraordinary healer. You were even able to heal the prince's feet. The consort wants to hire you as her personal doctor. But I've already been hired by the prince. Please tell the consort that I appreciate her offer, but I can't accept it. Heidi replied. Hunter, don't you think you're looking down on her cuteness? Sophia asked irritably. Calm down. I said no such thing. I'm already working for the prince, but now you're making me work for Lady Meriden. Are you saying that the consort is much more important than His Majesty, the great warrior who fought countless wars for the Empire? If you don't want to come with me to the consort, she might consider it disobedience, Sophia warned. And since when can a consort give orders to a general's son? Our family has always followed the orders of the Emperor and Empress Dowager. We have never obeyed the consort. Heidi was indignant. I don't understand you. You want to go against my family and consort Meriden? Stop shirking your responsibility, Hunter, Sophia exclaimed. And even if I go against the whole world, what are you going to do to me? I saved the prince's life. He's indebted to me now. There's nothing you can do to me except bite me. Heidi didn't hesitate to mock her cousin. I heard you. I have nothing more to say to you. Sophia deflected and left the general's house without another word. That bastard Hunter put me in prison and won't help me now. I promised her ladyship I'd bring Hunter back. What am I to do now? Sophia asked, perplexed. Once I get the chance, I'll make him regret his decision. A maid entered Sophia's room. She announced that Miss Viola had come to visit her. What can I do for you, Miss Viola? I don't think you and I have such a close relationship that you can come to me for no reason. Sophia was surprised to see Viola on her doorstep. I have heard that an unpleasant affair has taken place between you and Mr. Grante. I consider the enemy of my enemy, my friend. I have a way of getting revenge on him. Would you be willing to help me with it, Miss Sophia? A servant enters Heidi's room and tells her that a girl came to the door of their house crying and saying she was pregnant. She claimed that Hunter had once had a fling with her and dumped her. Is some girl pregnant by me again? How many times? This is the same pattern Sophia tried to trick me with. Can't you think of anything new this time? Annoyed, the girl thought to herself. When Heidi walked to the doorstep of her house, she saw a blonde, pretty girl. She had never met her before. Why did you come to me? I don't know you, Heidi addressed the girl. How can he not be ashamed? He took advantage of a girl, and now he pretends he doesn't know her. It's not for nothing that he's called a womanizer. The people gathered in the courtyard were indignant. Don't come any closer to me. Keep your distance. You're pregnant after all. What if something happens to you and you blame it on me? Heidi tried her best to keep a certain distance with this girl. Hunter, you promised me the best of everything in the world. Now why are you pushing me away from you? The girl asked, surprised. Her eyes were filled with tears. Okay, if you say the baby is mine, then answer me a few questions. How many months pregnant are you? When did you and I meet? What do I like about you? Heidi asked, but the girl was prepared and had no problem answering all those questions. And I see you don't give up and continue to be a masterful liar. You know, the girls in my mansion are not only kind and loving, but also beautiful. So what did I find so special about you? Why should I even fall in love with you? And why the spectacle? Heidi questioned. First, Sophia worked this scheme, and now you're going to go there too? Okay, Hunter, I heard you. I'll leave and never bother you again. I'll raise our child on my own. The girl shouted irritably and turned around to leave. The sudden movement caused the girl to get tangled in the hem of her dress and fall to the ground. Screaming, she clutched her stomach with both hands. The girl went into premature labor due to the impact of her stomach on the hard surface. Heidi lifted the girl off the ground and ordered her servants to prepare the birthing room. Hours later, Heidi was sitting by the girl's bedside holding an infant in her arms. What's wrong with my baby? Asked the girl as soon as she came to her senses. Heidi had to tell the girl that, unfortunately, the baby was born dead. Most likely, someone had drugged the girl with a slow poison that killed the infant. Heidi removed the poison from the girl's body, but she was unable to save the newborn. What does slow poison mean? It's true what they say. In this world, free cheese is only in a mousetrap. The girl covered her face with her hands and cried bitterly. Answer me. Who sent you here? You realize if I hadn't held you at the door, you would have passed out on the way back. If it wasn't for me, both you and your child would have died, said Heidi to the girl. One day, people came to me and asked me to sling mud at you. I agreed because I didn't expect them to be so ruthless. I didn't know they would try to kill me and my child. I was sent to you by Sophia and Viola, narrated the girl. The shadowy guard assigned to Heidi by the prince overheard all this dialogue. The shadow guard, assigned to Heidi by the prince, overheard the conversation. Are you saying that Sophia and Viola tried to kill an innocent resident to frame Hunter Grante? Asked the emperor as he finished reading Roland's report. I'm sure of it. The shadow guard I placed to guard Hunter witnessed that scene, replied his brother the prince. And what do you want me to do? Do you want me to imprison these girls? Asked the emperor. I want to take care of it myself, but it might ruin their reputation. I came to you to get your approval. Roland confessed to his brother. Please do whatever you want. Frankly, I don't care about those girls. Mr. Grante, Miss Viola's maid is in tears asking to see you. I can't stop her. This time the servant found Heidi in the garden. How many times can you do this? I'm already tired of having guests. How does Viola have the nerve to send her maid here? All right, let her in. Mr. Grante, you must help Miss Viola. Javier Docent has dragged my mistress into a tavern. I have absolutely no idea what he wants to do to her there. I don't know who else I can turn to. Viola's maid wailed and fell to her knees beside Heidi. Javier Docent? I've never gotten along with them. Is this really Viola's way of trying to provoke conflict between us? Okay, let's see what she's up to this time. Heidi thought to herself as she rose from her seat. When Viola approached the tavern, the guards blocked her way and did not allow her to enter. The guard at the door explained that the tavern had been ordered by Javier Docent and that no one dared enter. The man had an appointment with a lady. Luckily, Heidi didn't come to the tavern alone. She ordered her guards to deal with the obstacle of the establishment's guards. And while the fight was going on, she slipped quietly into the tavern. "Who's here? How dare you disturb us?" Javier was indignant when he saw Heidi on the threshold of the room. "I came here to rescue Miss Viola," Heidi announced with a chin-up. "Don't be ridiculous. I'm having a wonderful time with Miss Viola. None of us want you here," Javier exclaimed. "Then you'd better ask her yourself why she sent her maid to me asking me to save her. Or did I misunderstand something?" Heidi turned to Viola. "I have done nothing of the sort. Mr. Javier and I are very attached to each other. Mr. Grante must have had a misunderstanding," Viola said in a soft, calm voice. "Just a few days ago you were crying at the prince's mansion for him to marry you, and now you're in love with Mr. Javier? You're quick to change men." Crossing her arms over her chest, Heidi remarked. "Is that true?" Annoyed, Javier asked Viola. "Sir, don't listen to this man. It's all nonsense. Hunter is just jealous of you and is trying to provoke you," Viola exclaimed hotly, and tears ran down the girl's cheeks. "Damn you, Hunter. You've teased me so many times, and now you dare to slander Miss Viola. Now you're not getting out of here that easily," shouted Javier angrily and jumped up from his seat. Javier swung his fist to hit Heidi, but the girl managed to dodge. Javier fell to the wooden floor with a clatter. "Hunter, please leave Mr. Javier alone," Viola shouted and grabbed Heidi's hands. Heidi felt a rush of heat and cold sweat broke out on her face. Viola discreetly injected an aphrodisiac into the girl's arm. Viola grabbed Heidi's hands and pulled her toward her. "Mr. Grante, what are you doing? Please let me go!" Viola shouted loudly. Viola knew that Hunter and Javier had always been sworn enemies. When Javier saw that his girlfriend was being outdone by Hunter, he would be sure to stand up for her. Viola really hoped that Hunter's reputation would be shamed for good. "Let him go!" the prince exclaimed, and yanked Heidi out of Viola's tight embrace. "Your Majesty, Hunter Grante is an unscrupulous scoundrel. He tried to harass me, thus ruining my reputation. Please help me," Viola wailed, falling to her knees before the prince. "Don't play the innocent sheep. You think I don't know what's going on? Guards, arrest these two wicked schemers. Seal off the tavern and don't let anyone in." The prince ordered his guards. The prince brought Heidi to his room and laid her gently on the bed. The girl's whole body burned, and she was delirious. "I don't feel well. Help me," whispered the girl. "You're asking me to do it yourself." The prince answered the girl and kissed her passionately on the lips. The girl did not regain consciousness until the evening of the next day. She said goodbye to the prince and hurried to her home. The girl understood that there were many unpleasant rumors about her and the prince, but she could not reveal her true identity yet. The girl did not hurry to enter her house. She sat in her yard and thought about her future. Suddenly, she noticed a man cautiously making his way to the main entrance. "Great. At least some fun is finally in my life. It's time to have some fun," Heidi cheered. Entering the house, the girl found the thief in her father's study. The man scrutinized the documents. The girl sprayed the room with sleeping gas. The thief fell unconscious on the floor. Heidi had to splash cold water in the thief's face to get him to come to his senses as soon as possible. "I'm sure you know who's standing in front of you right now, and I'm sure you broke in here for a reason. Tell me, what did you sneak into my house for?" The girl held a small blade against the thief's body. "I won't tell you anything," fearlessly shouted the thief. "You'll have to tell me everything, or I'll cut out your tongue and feed it to my dog," the girl warned the thief. She carefully ran the knife across his face, leaving a long but shallow cut. "All right, I'll tell you everything. Just promise me you won't touch my face!" the thief exclaimed fearfully. The man told the girl that the prince had sent him to the house. Heidi burst into the prince's office and silently threw the brazen thief to the floor. "Sir, please forgive me. I had no other choice. Mr. Gruntai threatened me, promised to abuse my body. Forgive me for my weakness," pleaded the thief to the prince. "I hear you. Leave us alone." Prince sighed heavily. He realized that he was now going to have a tough conversation with Heidi. "Could you please tell me why the noble warrior prince sent someone to my house? If there is something in the Granth family that interests you, you could have just asked me," the girl exclaimed indignantly. "I'm interested in you," the prince confessed. "And what's so interesting about me? Do you really want to get to the bottom of this? Do you want to know why I don't want to reveal my identity?" Heidi asked, surprised. "Yes, I have to find out who you really are. After all, in a way, you belong to me now. You're my personal doctor, and I need to know everything about you. Otherwise, how can I trust you?" "What if I don't want to tell you anything about myself?" Heidi asked, to which the prince replied that he would continue his investigation until he got to the truth. "Not a noble prince, but a pain in the ass," Heidi muttered doomedly. "Okay, I'll tell you a little about myself. Do you know how many children my father has?" the girl asked the prince. "It is now. I am the only child in the family. In fact, I had a twin brother. He was a naughty boy, but was the treasure of our family. He had a unique ability to please everyone, without exception. We had fun together all the time. It was the happiest time in my childhood. But when I turned 7, I had to move to my grandmother's house, the first time I was separated from my brother. A few days after I arrived at my grandmother's house, I was notified of my brother's death. My father fought on the battlefields and in court for decades, and though he tried to remain neutral, he was still hated by many. That night, his enemies sent mercenaries to kill him, but my brother happened to hear a noise and went out to check what was going on. My brother died defending my father. My father could not accept the truth and blamed himself for his death. I came home immediately and found out that my father had gone crazy. He spent days looking at the image of my brother and talking to him as if he were alive. So I put on my brother's clothes to comfort him, hoping it would make him feel better. The moment my father saw me in my brother's clothes, he came to his senses and acted as if nothing had happened. Since then, I have decided to play the part of my brother and live like a man. Some of the old servants of the house know of my true identity. Thanks to them, I managed to hide my appearance to this day. But isn't it strange that the general's daughter suddenly disappeared? The prince asked, surprised. A lot of people think I still live at my grandmother's house to this day. Heidi answered him. Since every year my father wants to visit his daughter, I constantly have to make up all sorts of excuses. I can't reveal my identity yet because I'm afraid my father will go crazy again. What about you? Have you ever thought about yourself? It's not like you can hide your identity from your father forever. The prince exclaimed resentfully. And I wasn't going to hide from my father forever. I'll definitely figure something out. I just need time to do it. The day you want to regain your identity, I will do everything in my power to help you, exclaimed the prince, and pulled the girl against him. Their communication was again interrupted by a servant. He announced that the emperor wanted to see Hunter Grante urgently. Why does the emperor want to see me? Heidi wondered. The girl wasn't looking to meet the emperor. She was anxious to keep out of his sight, and especially now, after the gossip had surfaced. It was unlikely that he liked the fact that socializing with her was negatively affecting his brother's reputation. The crown prince is seriously ill. Consort Meriden heard you were a marvelous doctor and recommended you to his majesty. That's why you were called here. The empress's servant explained to Heidi. I thought you were bringing a wonderful doctor. Who is this man? The empress was surprised to see a young, stubby fellow in front of her. Your lordship, this is General Francis Grante's son. He is a marvelous doctor recommended by Consort Meriden. A servant explained to the woman. A marvelous doctor at such a young age? Are you mocking me? I fear he is simply a fraud. The empress objected to him. I dare not call myself a miracle doctor, but I am definitely not a rogue. If your majesty is so concerned about the crown prince, then I suggest that you at least let me try. said Heidi to the woman. The Empress offered to prove her words in practice. The woman warned that if the doctor could not cure her son, he would not leave the palace alive. Cousin, I don't understand why you recommended Hunter Granta to Her Majesty. Wouldn't it be harder to straighten him out if he actually cured the prince? Marianne asked her cousin Meriden. Silly girl. The Crown Prince is the Empress's favorite child. She'll tear Hunter apart if the prince gets any worse after treatment, replied Meriden to the girl. But Hunter is a very skillful doctor. I doubt he can't help the prince. Marianne objected to her sister. Even if he can save the Crown Prince, he can't save himself. I can't do anything to him outside the palace, but as long as he's here, we'll play by my rules. If he can't be of any use to me, then why should he live? Meriden explained to her sister. Heidi had already been performing all sorts of procedures on the Crown Prince for hours. I'm surprised that a skinny young man like him is still doing procedures on the Crown Prince. A normal doctor would have passed out from exhaustion long ago. The local healers marveled. Finishing the last procedure, Heidi told the attending physician that the Crown Prince would wake up soon. The girl had been able to help him. He would recover. Suddenly, the girl's eyes went dark and she fell to the floor. Her personal maid entered Consort Meriden's room and announced that the woman wanted to see her son's attending physician, Mr. Garner. So, have you used the drug on Hunter yet? Consort Meriden inquired. No, but I learned something important. When Hunter collapsed, I felt his pulse. It was weak and calm. I also took a brief look at his body and realized that Mr. Grante was in fact a woman. The doctor shared his observations. Why, that's wonderful news. If Hunter Grante is in fact a woman, she has committed a magnificent insult by passing herself off as a man. Not only her, but her family will be dishonored. Meriden rejoiced. Quickly spread the rumor about this. I want everyone in the Empire to know that Hunter Granta is a fraud, ordered the Dr. Meriden. This time, I will get my way. I will make sure that the Grante family is disgraced. Soon, all friends and allies will turn their backs on her. In time, the Grante name will fade into oblivion. Consort Meriden thought to herself with a kind of morbid joy. Say thank you to Heidi for saving my son. How is she feeling now? Asked the Emperor to his brother. Roland told him that the girl was exhausted from the treatment, so she was resting for the moment. A servant entered the Emperor's office and announced that Consort Meriden requested an audience with him. What brings you here, my dear? Asked the Emperor. I heard that the Crown Prince has gotten better, so I dropped all my business to congratulate His Majesty. Mr. Grante has indeed lived up to his reputation as a doctor, but I just heard rumors about him. I don't know if I should talk about them. If you doubt your words, you're better off keeping silent, Roland advised the woman. Your Highness, this rumor worries me greatly. I dare not hide it from the Emperor, Consort Meriden explained. Hunter Grante has no doubt made great contributions to the imperial family. However, he has hidden his true identity from His Majesty. Hunter is not actually a man, but a woman. We do not know why she came to the palace disguised as a man, but please be careful with her and keep an eye on her. We don't know her true motives. So what if Hunter is actually a woman? The Emperor asked in a casual voice. How, Your Majesty, doesn't it surprise you? Doesn't it strike you as suspicious and extremely strange? Consort Meriden asked, surprised. The woman was sure that such information could destroy Hunter, but things had not gone according to plan. The thing is, my brother already told me everything. I know that Hunter is a girl. Also, Roland has explained to me why she is doing this, replied the woman to the Emperor. A few hours earlier, Roland had seen the Crown Prince's attending physician run out of the Empress's palace with a surprised expression on his face. This seemed strange to the man, so he sent a shadow guard after him. A shadow guard overheard a conversation between the attending physician and Consort Meriden. He immediately reported it to Roland. Consort Meriden, if you're trying to pick on Heidi's personality, you're going to be very disappointed, because I won't let you lay a finger on her. Thought to himself, the prince glared angrily at the woman. A few hours later, Heidi finally came to her senses. How are you feeling? In an excited voice, Lewis asked the girl. Lewis, where am I? How long have I slept? What's up with the crown prince, and where is the warrior prince now? Heidi exclaimed, grabbing Lewis by the sleeve. Take your hand away first. Men and women must keep a proper distance from each other. The warrior prince will kill me if he sees you touching me. Frightened, Lewis exclaimed, yanking his hand away. What do you mean, man and woman? What are you talking about now? The girl was frightened. She didn't want to believe that now Lewis knew her secret, too. There's no point in you hiding it anymore. Everyone knows about your secret. There's been a rumor floating around town for hours now that Hunter Granty is actually a girl, explained Lewis to the girl. This can't be, Heidi grimaced. Your secret was told to you by consort Meriden, explained the girl as Roland entered the room. Then my father, too, will find out about it. That can't be allowed to happen. If he remembers his brother's death, he'll lose his mind again, the girl exclaimed. Heidi abruptly jumped out of bed and rushed toward her house. The girl was already met at the threshold of the house by her faithful servants. They were also saddened that her secret had been revealed. One of the servants told the girl that her father had locked himself in his room and would not allow anyone to come in to see him. Heidi walked over to her father's study door and knocked loudly. Since no one answered the girl for a long time, she had to kick in the doors. When she broke into the room, she saw her father hanging from the ceiling. Unable to bear his grief, the man decided to end his life by suicide. The girl snatched up her dagger and quickly cut the rope. Coughing, General Francis Granty fell into his daughter's arms. Father, what are you doing? Scared, the girl shrieked. Let me go. I'm so ashamed of myself. I remembered everything. I remembered going crazy after your brother died. All these years you carried your brother's things to comfort me, replied the girl's father. Bitter tears were flowing down the man's cheeks. You suffered for me for so long. I don't deserve to be your father. There's no point in me living anymore. Calm down, father. You don't have to do this. I'll be the next one to go crazy if I lose you as well. Do you really want to leave me alone? If you're sorry for what happened, you can make it up to me, Heidi exclaimed hotly. I just want you to live. I believe that's what my brother would want too, said Heidi and cried bitterly. All right, as you wish. I'll live for you. The father agreed with the girl. And yeah, since everyone knows I'm a woman, I guess it doesn't make sense for me to marry another woman anymore, right? Asked Heidi's father. The man replied to her that they would announce the breakup of the engagement as soon as possible. Ingrid is a kind and sweet girl. I will take her as my goddaughter so that no one else will dare to hurt her, father promised the girl. By the way, why did you ask me about marriage? Have you already found someone? Is your lover a warrior prince? There's a reason why there are rumors about you two floating around the city. Am I right? Heidi's father asked. What makes you think that? It's just a rumor, nothing more. I am simply being the prince's personal doctor. We have no relationship at the moment. Heidi hastened to explain herself. I'm telling you again. You better stay away from him. I'm worried about you, and I want you to be happy. Once you get involved with the imperial family, trouble won't be long in coming, warned the girl by her father. A servant entered the room and announced that a belligerent prince had arrived at the manor. Heidi was surprised at this. The prince had been frequenting her house with his visits. Sir, why did you come here? Heidi asked the prince, running out of her father's study. The crown's son has just come to his senses, so his majesty has decided to celebrate with a banquet. It's to your credit, so you're expected as the chief guest. Roland explained to the girl. I'll come by tonight to pick you up and we'll go to the banquet together, said the prince. General Granta did not like the fact that this man wanted to go to the banquet with his daughter. Marshal Prince, I really appreciate you agreeing to accompany my daughter, but once she steps into your lane, there will be unpleasant rumors immediately. Please consider the reputation of the imperial family. The general covered his daughter with his body. That's very kind of you, but I'm afraid she won't be able to go with you. Again, please forgive us. Don't worry about that, General Grante. I'd like to discuss something with you in private, do you mind? Asked Roland. The general invited the prince into his office. "Well, then it's settled then. I'll pick up your daughter," said the prince as he left the general's office. They talked for a few minutes. "Father, why did you change your mind? Why did you let him pick me up?" the girl asked her father in surprise. The general refused to speak to her on the subject. "And why all the secrecy? Why won't he tell me anything? And most importantly, what did the prince tell him?" These and similar questions tormented the girl extremely. She didn't like it when someone decided her fate behind her back. In the evening, the prince arrived at Heidi's house, accompanied by his personal physician, Louis. When the front door of Heidi's house finally opened, the prince froze in amazement. Prince saw Heidi dressed in women's clothing for the first time. "You look absolutely gorgeous! Are you definitely the man I knew earlier?" Louis exclaimed in surprise. "Sir, is something wrong? Do you think I look good too?" asked the girl to the prince. Heidi noticed that the prince had been unable to utter a word for several minutes. Roland's face was crimson with embarrassment. "The banquet will begin soon, so we should hurry." "It's not good to keep the emperor waiting," said the prince in the most casual voice possible. He felt bad in front of Louis for reacting so violently to the girl's beauty. "Heidi, you have contributed greatly to my son's recovery. Since you are a miracle doctor, I will give you a special reward," the emperor announced loudly. On either side of him sat his mother Empress and consort Meriden. The emperor allowed the girl to use in her preparations all the herbs growing in the lands of his empire. Heidi was overjoyed at this gift. "Your Majesty, don't you think a banquet without entertainment would be boring?" Consort Meriden asked the emperor. The woman was very fond of showing off her poems at banquets. "How about something exciting, like a poetry contest? I'd really like to compete with Miss Grante, the miracle doctor," Meriden exclaimed. Heidi was extremely surprised to hear this. The girl had never been fond of poems and didn't want to participate in any contest. "I have heard that Miss Grante's mother came from a literary family. Besides, she was a famous literary person herself. Miss Grante must also be well-versed in literature and poetry. Heidi, will you accept my challenge?" asked the girl consort. "The moon is round and bright today. Let's make up a poem about her," Meriden suggested. The woman pouted that a fashionista like Heidi would fail miserably at this assignment and be embarrassed. Meriden started telling poems about the moon. Heidi didn't like it, since she hadn't given her consent to participate in the contest. "The white moon hangs in the sky. Shadows tremble with the blows of the wind. Insects and birds sleep peacefully. Here is a toast to our great dynasty." Meriden read out her verse loudly. "Excellent!" Consort Meriden so vividly paints a clear image of a peaceful, quiet night with moonlight. "This woman is a very talented poet." Clapping their hands joyfully, exclaimed the nobles present. "Now it's your turn, Miss Grante. You must have come up with a great poem by now. After all, you don't want to tarnish your mother's reputation, do you?" asked the girl consort. "Consort Meriden, you overestimate Heidi Grante. She's only managed to change her clothes, not her brains. How can that girl come up with anything decent?" The invited nobles began to mock Heidi. "I appeal to all the great poets. Please forgive me for what I am about to do. These people have left me no choice. Again, forgive me for wanting to steal your poems." The girl thought to herself wistfully, "Consort Meriden, you're going to regret deciding to pick on me." Mentally, Heidi addressed the woman. Meriden was startled by the girl's confident look. She was acting differently today than she had before. In front of the bed, the moon shines brightly, dressed seemingly in white hoarfrost. Staring at the moon brings forth my nostalgia. Heidi read out a verse by a little-known poet. "It's impossible! How could she come up with such a magnificent poem in such a short time?" The invited nobility marveled. "How do you like my poem, your lordship? If you didn't like it, I still have a couple more options." Heidi addressed the consort. "To invite the moon, I raise the bowl. There are 3 of us as my shadow appears. I entrust to the bright and high moon my sad heart to accompany you westward, away from your lonely part. Heidi continued reading the poem. Well, that's impossible. How could she come up with poems like that? Meriden thought to herself irritably. That was wonderful. I enjoyed it very much. I will reward you for your splendid performance, joyfully exclaimed the Emperor. I didn't know you were so good at poetry, too, praised the girl Roland. Heidi was grateful to fate for her time in school. Her mother also made her learn poems all the time. Fortunately, Heidi was able to remember some of them. How interesting. I'm glad you weren't killed by the mercenaries I recently sent to you. The man watching the girl thought to himself. Heidi felt someone's gaze on her. She turned around and saw a large crowd of people behind her. It was impossible to tell who was watching her. The next day, Heidi saw her father kicking some people out of the yard. What's going on? Isn't that General Lichard's second son and his mother? Why did they come to our house? The girl asked her father. These people came here to propose to Ingrid. Madame Lichard wants to marry her son to my goddaughter. I will not allow it. General Granta explained to the girl. Her son is not only a bum, but a promiscuous womanizer. He doesn't even deserve to meet Ingrid. Father, if they come to bother Ingrid again, tell me at once. I'll take the girl for a walk, so they won't even have time to socialize with her, asked Heidi to her father. After breakfast, Heidi decided to go shopping with Ingrid. They stopped at a shop selling hair jewelry. I'm so glad you finally regained your identity. Now we can go shopping together. Ingrid couldn't stop rejoicing. She finally had a friend in her life. Miss Ingrid, I'm sorry to disturb you, but I need to tell you something. General Lichard's second son, a boy named Thomas, appeared next to the girls. Hey, what are you doing here? Are you really following us? Keep your distance from us. I forbid you to communicate with Ingrid, Heidi exclaimed indignantly. Miss Ingrid, don't get me wrong. I just want to express my feelings for you. Thomas explained his insistence. You know there's something wrong with your eye? Why does it keep twitching? Why don't you get Heidi to check you out? Ingrid asked the boy. I'm trying to seduce her with my wink. Does she really not get it? Or is she just pretending not to? Think to yourself, Thomas. Miss Ingrid, I have strong feelings for you, and I don't mind that you were once engaged to Heidi. Don't worry, once we are married, I will send all my concubines away from the house, said Thomas to the girl. But I don't like you, Ingrid admitted. Thomas, leave the girl alone with your confessions. Not even the maids in my house would look at a worthless lad like you, let alone Ingrid. You think I don't know what you're thinking right now? Heidi asked the boy. And you're a pervert in general. You disguised yourself as a man and seduced girls to satisfy your obsession with them. I know you took over Mrs. Goosel's house. You forced all the girls in it to serve you. Thomas exclaimed. Shut up. Who are you to slander me? You should be taught a lesson. Heidi replied and touched one of the acupuncture points on the guy's body. Suddenly, Thomas began to itch violently. All the skin on his body began to itch wildly. Come on, Ingrid. Forget about that asshole, said Heidi, and took the girl as far away from the market square as possible. Finally, that itch is gone. It was bloody Heidi who humiliated me in the market square. I was itching like an asshole in front of everyone. What did she even do to me? I'll be sure to avenge that humiliation on her, grumbled Thomas, returning home in the evening. Suddenly, someone threw a thick sack over the guy's head. Who are you, and what do you want from me? Shouted Thomas. The guy was led to the kidnapping order and had a bag removed from his head. That's you? Thomas wondered. Ingrid's shadow guardian burst into Heidi's room and reported to the girl that Ingrid was missing. Miss Ingrid was shopping in town and I was following her, but at some point I was hit on the head and lost consciousness. When I came to, Miss Ingrid was nowhere to be found. The shadow guard told the girl. How is that possible? Is someone targeting Ingrid? Who could it be, and why would he want the girl? We need to figure something out right away and save her, Heidi said thoughtfully. Miss Heidi, perhaps you could use a hunting dog to find Ingrid. The dog has a great sense of smell. Let him sniff something of the girl's clothes, and I'm sure he could find her," suggested Heidi to the guard. Thomas tried again to confess his love to Ingrid, but the girl was not in the mood for romantic relations with him, so she demanded to stay as far away from her as possible. Suddenly, Heidi burst into the room. She was holding a huge black dog on a leash. "Give her a break. How many more times do you need to say that?" the girl exclaimed irritably and pushed Thomas away from Ingrid with her foot. "Ingrid, are you okay?" The girl ran up to her friend and grabbed her shoulders. She was worried that Thomas had managed to hurt her. "Miss Heidi, what about him?" a guard asked the girl. He was holding the bound Thomas in his hands. Looking at Thomas, Heidi realized that he was under the influence of a narcotic substance. The girl gave Thomas a sniff of a special drug. The volatile substances of the drug could neutralize any drug. "Why don't you get quiet and keep hitting on Ingrid?" Heidi asked Thomas. "Please forgive me, I didn't mean it. Someone drugged me and I couldn't control myself anymore," Thomas admitted. "And who did it? Don't tell me you don't know that," said Heidi. "I'd love to tell you, but I can't. These men warned me that they would beat me if I blabbed to anyone about them. Don't ask me to tell you what happened to me." A frightened Thomas blurted out in a hasty voice. Who could have threatened Thomas with death? After all, his father is an honored general. Whoever is behind this has a lot of power. Heidi thought to herself, "Miss Heidi, would you like to put it in His Highness's hands? Perhaps he can think of something," suggested the shadow guard to the girl. And he was right. After all, the warrior prince is the second most important person in the country. He has immense power and connections. "Ingrid, from now on, it doesn't matter where you go. You must let me know in advance. Also, I'm going to ask the prince to put bodyguards on you," said Heidi to her friend. When Heidi got home, she saw several young people in the yard. There were gift boxes in front of them. "Well, you're finally back. Where have you been all this time?" the general exclaimed, noticing his daughter. The general explained to the girl that all these young men had come to their house to ask for his daughter's hand in marriage. "Your Highness, I was just at Heidi's house for a medical consultation, and there I also heard that last night about 10 men proposed to her," told Prince Louis. "But don't worry, she chased them all away. By the way, Miss Heidi is good-looking and skilled in medicine. Besides, she has recently restored her name and reputation. Sir, if you don't take action, I'm afraid you might lose her." "You're right, but there are already rumors about us. Even though everyone already knows Heidi is a girl, will it ruin her reputation again if I directly approach her?" The prince spoke thoughtfully. Heidi's shadow guard walked up to the prince and whispered something in his ear. "Well done. I will now personally interrogate Thomas Lychard. You may go and get your reward," said the shadow guard to the prince. Going to Thomas Lychard's interrogation room, the prince was glad to have a reason to meet Heidi again. As he approached the interrogation room, Roland froze in surprise. His guards were lying next to the interrogation room. They were unconscious. When the prince swung open the interrogation room, he saw Thomas's dead body lying on the floor. "Are you saying Thomas was killed by someone?" Heidi wondered. According to Lewis's initial diagnosis, Thomas died of poison. Lewis has not yet been able to determine exactly what kind of poison killed General Lehart's son, Roland told the girl. "Although I immediately sealed off all the mansion's passageways, it was too late. The killer had escaped. It must have been the same person who drugged Thomas earlier. For fear of being exposed, he killed Thomas. General Lychard is a high-ranking official. To dare to kill his son and not fear being accused, that man must have more power than a general. There are only a few people in this country who can boast such power. They are the Emperor himself, Prince Nathan, Prince Zindi, my 2 brothers, the Empress, Consort Meridon, the Prime Minister, and myself. It could be someone feuding with me. It turns out it could be the Empress or Consort Meridon." Heidi guessed. A servant appeared and announced that Prince Nathan had arrived to visit Heidi. "Miss Heidi, I've heard so much about you. I am finally lucky enough to meet you in person." Prince Nathan smiled sweetly at her. Dear cousin, and you're here? Nathan turned to Roland. The girl noted to herself that Roland was not happy to see his cousin. There was a tense atmosphere around them. I've heard that Miss Heidi is a skilled physician. Today I've come to ask her to heal a long-standing wound on my back. Continuing to smile, Nathan said, You can leave now, Heidi won't help you. She is my personal doctor, so she will only take care of those I ask, said Roland to his brother. The Emperor knows that my old wound hasn't healed yet, so he was the one who told me to come to see Miss Heidi. In that case, I'll have to go back and report to the Emperor that Miss Heidi refused my request. The smile never left Nathan's face. Ah, so you just need my skills to heal your wound? It's not such a big deal. Prince Nathan will walk with me, said Heidi, and led the prince into the spare room. She didn't feel like arguing with the Emperor himself. Your Highness, don't be so upset. Let's pretend that I went behind your back and found some extra income. Heidi turned to Roland. Miss Heidi, I hope my back doesn't scare you. When I was young, too, I participated in many battles, just like Roland. However, in one of the battles, I received a severe wound on my back. Prince Nathan admitted to the girl as they began the acupuncture treatment. Although I didn't die at the time, the effects didn't go unnoticed. My back still hurts to this day. By the way, I heard that you and my brother Roland are very close. Is that true? Nathan asked the girl. No, that's just vile gossip. I work for His Majesty. He's completely indifferent to me. Crossing her arms over her chest revived Heidi. Well, if he proposes to you, will you agree to marry him? Nathan asked the unexpected question. And why should I accept his offer? I feel good right now in being single. So if I can always stay like this, my life will be great, replied a blushing Heidi. Well then, said the prince and rose abruptly from his seat. Nathan pulled the girl down onto her back. She only had time to exclaim that she hadn't gotten all the needles into his back. And if I propose to you, will you marry me? Asked another question Nathan asked. Prince Nathan, I'm sorry, but I'm a free-spirited person. I like to be alone. Heidi slipped out from under the man's arm. You like someone? Is that why you rejected me? Do you like my brother Roland? Nathan asked the girl. Prince Nathan, let's better continue your treatment. Let's stay out of each other's way. We need to continue the acupuncture treatment. Otherwise, your health will only worsen, leading to paralysis, said the girl to the prince. Heidi disobeyed my orders and went to treat that nasty Nathan. Prince Roland thought to himself irritably. Roland is met by Louis above and announces that Thomas's mother has come to the prince's palace and asks for her son's return. But how did she know her son was in my mansion? Roland wondered. Upon seeing the body of her dead son, the woman wept bitterly. Your Highness, my family has no enmity with you, so why did you kill my son? Madame Lichard asked the prince. But I didn't kill him. Roland objected to the woman. You expect me to buy that? You captured my son, and he died on your estate. How can you dare to claim you didn't kill him after that? Madame Lichard was indignant. Your Highness, with the death of your son, you must kill me as well! Madame Lichard shouted and lunged at the prince with her fists. The guards arrived and pulled the woman away from Roland. I know you wield great power and care little for the lives of others, but don't think I'm going to let this go so easily. As long as I live, I will fight for justice. I will take you with me to hell. The woman couldn't stop screaming. Miss Lichard, this is not the place to shout recklessly. I will launch an investigation and bring justice. You will know the results of that investigation, but for now, you should leave this place, said the woman to the prince. The next day, Prince Roland gave Thomas's body to the Lichard family so that they could bury their son with honor. I swear that Prince Roland will pay for my son's death, Madame Lichard promised. Don't forget, he's a person of royal blood. Even if he's a murderer, what can we do about it? General Lichard reminded his wife. To express words of condolence to the Lichard family, Thomas's Uncle Jeremy came forward. Jeremy, you were right. Thomas was kidnapped by the prince and killed. What am I supposed to do now? I can't even get an explanation for my son's death." Swallowing back tears, Mrs. Lickard exclaimed hotly, "My dear sister, even the emperor will be punished if he commits a crime, let alone the prince. If we spread the news of the warrior prince's crime, you can go to the palace and ask the emperor for punishment," replied Jeremy to the woman. "Even if the emperor cares a lot about his brother, he won't be able to save him under the immense pressure of officials and peoples. Yesterday, I disobeyed the belligerent prince and decided to give Prince Nathan the treatment. Should I apologize to him now?" Heidi wondered. A panting Louis ran up to the girl. He told her that a great misfortune had befallen the warrior prince. He had been arrested by the emperor for questioning. Roland is declared a murderer. Although the warrior prince is the emperor's brother, the emperor may imprison him to appease the Lickard family, since they have most likely provided irrefutable evidence. Heidi said thoughtfully, "You have to act fast. You can't sit back when Roland needs your help," Louis exclaimed. "What are you talking about? Of course I'm going to help him. The only way to prove the prince's innocence is to find the real murderer. You must tell me what poison killed Thomas." "I don't. And don't look at me like that. I only started my career as a doctor a few years ago. How can I recognize every poison? Not everyone is as talented as you," Louis admitted to the girl. "Okay, I'll take that as a compliment. Looks like I need to examine Thomas's body in person," said Heidi. But Louis replied to the girl that it was impossible since Thomas's body had been given to his family. The man doubted that the Lickard family would allow their son's body to be examined. "Don't worry, I'll resolve this issue." Heidi and Louis sneak into the Lickard family temple. "There's really no one here like you said." "How did you know that?" Louis asked the girl in a whisper. "The emperor is interrogating the belligerent prince with officials. And of course, the Lickard family went to the palace to provide evidence. The remaining servants guarded the doors, but such people have never been a hindrance to me." Heidi admitted and opened the coffin lid. "I'm only doing this to find the killer and bring justice. Please, Thomas, forgive me for disturbing you," turned the girl to the dead man. The girl took thick needles and used them to collect samples for study. After finishing her research, Heidi concluded that Thomas had been killed by ecstasy powder. The girl knew that only one store in the capital sold the substance. Heidi often bought various drugs from this store, so she was well acquainted with the owner. "Mrs. Grante, I only sell legal drugs. How could you think you'd find ecstasy in my store?" The shopkeeper hurriedly showed a look of incomprehension on her face. "Miss Johnson, let's talk privately," suggested Heidi to the woman. Without waiting for an invitation, the girl proceeded to the back room of the store. "Miss Johnson, I don't want to embarrass you. I know you can't say that in front of other clients. There are only 3 of us at the moment. Now please tell me who bought the ecstasy powder from you." Heidi repeated her question. "Miss Granty, even if I did sell something like this, I can't tell you anything about its buyer." The woman replied, "Did you hear about the warrior prince poisoning Thomas? Thomas actually died from ecstasy powder. So if the prince finds out that you sold that powder, you know what will happen to you," Heidi warned the woman. "I didn't think it was that serious. Of course I'll tell you who I sold that powder to," the shopkeeper exclaimed fearfully. "Your Majesty, our country always acts in accordance with the law. The criminal, whether he is a common man or the prince himself, must receive severe punishment. We really hope that you will bring justice." Addressed the Emperor Jeremy. The emperor did not know what to do in such a difficult situation. He knew that his brother did not kill anyone without reason, but he could not leave this request unanswered either. His servant came to the emperor and quietly reported that Heidi wanted to see him. The man was overjoyed. He was sure that this clever girl would think of something. Entering the throne room, Heidi bowed low to the emperor. "Your Majesty, I have discovered that Thomas died from a poison called ecstasy powder. Because of its rarity, it was not difficult to find a buyer. The last time this drug was purchased was by Thomas's uncle, Jeremy," the girl said. The guards immediately ran up to Jeremy and handcuffed him. "Jeremy, do you admit to killing your nephew?" the emperor asked in a firm voice. Jeremy realized that he couldn't get away with it, so he fully admitted his guilt. "That can't be!" Mrs. Litchard gasped in surprise. "Jeremy, you're his uncle and my brother, so why did you kill him?" An enraged Mrs. Lickard grabbed her brother by the scruff of the neck. "He's just unlucky. I once tried to prove myself to a warrior prince, but he turned his back on me. Since then, I've been waiting for a chance for revenge, and Thomas became that chance," Jeremy admitted. The emperor ordered Jeremy to be taken away while imprisoned in the dungeon. Before he left, Jeremy scrutinized Prince Nathan's eyes. "Your Highness, are you all right?" Heidi asked the prince. Roland answered her that he was fine. "Well, since you are doing well, don't forget to give me a raise as a reward," the girl asked the prince. "Mrs. Heidi is very clever. If it weren't for you, Roland would have a hard time proving his innocence." Nathan praised the girl. "You know what surprises me? Why on earth would Jeremy confess so quickly? That strikes me as very strange. He could have lied about something to protect himself, but he didn't for some reason." Heidi shared her observations. "I think Jeremy was just a pawn in someone else's game. The real culprit stayed in the shadows. Well, since the real culprit hasn't been found, you two should be on your guard. He or she might come up with a more nefarious plan next time," Nathan warned. "What do you mean? Do you know something?" asked his brother Roland. "No, I don't know anything. I'm just worried about you, my dear little brother. If anything happens to you, don't blame me for not warning you," said Nathan to his brother, and left to go about his business. "Your thoughts make sense. I'll send people to investigate Jeremy to find out who he's been socializing with. Perhaps we can get to the true culprit," said Heidi to the prince. "Your Highness, why don't you like Nathan? He has a good reputation, doesn't he?" Unexpectedly, the girl asked Roland. "It's just his false image. Don't trust him. He's dangerous. Stay as far away from him as possible," the prince warned the girl. "And why is he so angry? If he finds out I agreed to help Nathan again, he's not going to be happy about it. Anyway, when he finds out, we'll figure out what to do." Heidi thought to herself fearfully. "Heidi, you're finally back. Veronica is already waiting for you," Ingrid exclaimed as soon as she saw Heidi on the doorstep. "Why did she come to my house?" Heidi wondered. "Hunter, is that you? I'm not used to seeing you in women's clothes," said Veronica, walking up to her cousin. The girl felt awkward. After all, she had spent her whole life thinking she was socializing with her cousin Hunter. Now, all of a sudden, she had a cousin. "Heidi, do you know about the Balin Temple in the suburbs? They say that if you make a wish there, it's sure to come true. I'd like to go there with you and Ingrid." Veronica told her sister the purpose of her visit. "Balin Temple? Isn't it famous for blessing people to find the perfect partner? Veronica, are you in love with someone?" Heidi asked her sister. "What if I really went to the temple and wished that Roland would become my spouse?" A thought flashed through Heidi's mind. "Veronica, for the sake of your happy marriage, I agree to go to Balin Temple," Heidi exclaimed and hugged her cousin. "I learned that Heidi, Ingrid, and Veronica went to the Balin Temple today. Go after them and make sure nothing happens to them. Just try to stay out of their sight. Protect them secretly," ordered the prince to one of his guards. "Sir, there's something I want to tell you. Do you know that Balin Temple is famous for blessing people for a happy marriage?" asked the prince by his guard. "Why are you only telling me this now? Quickly take me to this temple," ordered the emperor, jumping up from his seat. "Hello, much-honored abbot. I am not alone today. These are my friends, Mrs. Heidi and Mrs. Ingrid." Veronica introduced her friends. The abbot motioned for the girls to follow him to the backyard. Veronica explained that this temple has a custom. At the beginning, all visitors must wash in the backyard. Only then can they receive a blessing. "This is your room. No one will bother you here," said the abbot and pointed to a wooden door. Heidi swung open the door to the room and froze in place in horror. "Your Highness, what are you doing here?" the abbot wondered. The prince demanded to be escorted to Heidi and her friends. Very well, follow me. The abbot agreed and escorted the prince to the girls' room. The girls are resting in this room now. The abbot pointed with his hand to the wooden door. When the prince swung open the doors of the room, he also froze in place in surprise. Heidi was not alone in the room. A half-naked man sat in front of her. "Your Highness, what are you doing here?" Heidi exclaimed in surprise. "You're the one to explain to me what you've set up here in broad daylight." The prince shouted indignantly. "Heidi, how can you pull something like that behind my back with another man, and even in a temple?" Roland resented. A startled Veronica and Ingrid entered the room. 3 girls and a half-naked man. "What kind of hobby do you have?" marveled the prince. "How can a noble prince fill his brain with something unseemly? We're not doing what you think we're doing. Actually, this man is my patient." Annoyed, Heidi replied, "This man saved my life when I was attacked by bandits. His name is Duncan. To repay his kindness, I promise to help him at any time in case of emergency. This morning he came to me badly wounded," Veronica confessed. "I lied to bring Heidi here and help Duncan. I couldn't show him to the town healer because I was afraid someone would find out his secret identity and notify the authorities to arrest him. The local abbot is a friend of mine, so he agreed to this adventure. I confess I turned to Heidi for help since Duncan is a murderer." "Are you friends with assassins?" the prince exclaimed in amazement. "Ah, your highness, why are you so noisy today? I didn't realize you were so boring. It's obvious that Veronica has fallen in love with that man. You have absolutely no sense of romance." Heidi had to cover the prince's mouth with her hand to get him to stop screaming. "Since this man saved my cousin's life, I will also help him," said Heidi to the prince. "War Prince and Lady Heidi, what are you doing here?" asked Duncan as he came to his senses. Heidi asked him to tell them who he was injured by and who was his target. "I can't answer your questions," replied Duncan. "Come on, the warrior prince is the devil incarnate himself. How can you not confess to him? Do you despise the emperor's brother?" Heidi asked the boy. "If I give you the name of the customer, you will arrest me immediately," Duncan said excitedly. "If you don't confess, I can also arrest you," said the prince to Duncan. "You don't want to talk. Don't talk. Keep your mouth shut. After all, there are a few empty spaces in the prince's dungeon. We'll lock you in there and torture you brutally," Heidi warned. "My target was Prince Nathan," Duncan finally admitted. "My father was an official, but he refused to become a supporter of Prince Nathan. Then the prince set my father up to commit a crime. By such actions, he destroyed my family. To get revenge, I learned to kill and became an assassin. Last night I sneaked into Prince Nathan's mansion to kill him, but failed and was attacked by a dozen guards. Although I managed to escape, I was severely wounded. I had no choice but to seek help from Mistress Veronica. Thank you all for your help. One day I will repay you. Prince Nathan has many secret agents, and he will soon learn that I am in this temple. To avoid further trouble, he will send his men to kill me. When he finds out you helped me, you'll be in trouble too, so please let me go alone," Duncan asked Roland. "You think I'm afraid of Nathan?" Roland asked the boy. The abbot ran into the room and warned that Nathan's men had surrounded the temple and were demanding that Duncan be given to them. "Cousin Heidi, your highness, please save Duncan. If he is captured, he will surely be killed," Veronica pleaded. "Mrs. Veronica, you saved my life once before. I will never forget your kindness. I would be ashamed if I caused you any more trouble. I will go out to Prince Nathan's men, and you stay here safely." In a firm voice, Duncan said, "Duncan, will you continue to hunt for my brother if I help you?" Roland asked unexpectedly. "What do you want? Do you want me to stop hunting him, or do you want me to continue? I can only promise you one thing as long as I live. I will pursue your enemies." Kneeling before the prince said Duncan. "I hope you remember your words," said Prince Roland to Duncan. Prince Nathan's men made a great commotion in the temple courtyard. They demanded that Duncan be brought to them at once. Prince Nathan's men promised to raze the temple to the ground if their request was not granted. Where do you get the nerve to say that in front of the temple? Roland said in a calm voice. Your Highness, why are you here? Prince Nathan's men wondered. The view here is beautiful, and I've heard that wishes are granted here. So why doesn't the prince visit this place with me? Heidi asked. Your Highness, we are following Prince Nathan's orders to arrest Duncan's killer. He tried to kill the prince last night, but was unsuccessful. We pursued him, and the trail led us to this temple. Prince Nathan's men explained to Roland. But there's no one else here but us and the abbot, Heidi objected. Are you deliberately trying to ruin our prayer? Heidi and I came here to pray for a happy marriage. Are you really going to have a fully armed guard break into the temple and interfere with us? In a voice ringing with anger, the prince asked, What on earth is he talking about? Now everyone will think that I came with the prince to the temple to ask for a blessing for our happy marriage. Various rumors will spread around the city again. Heidi thought to herself irritably. No, we don't want to disturb you in any way! Prince Nathan's men exclaimed fearfully. They knew that Prince Roland was extremely dangerous when he was angry. But I fear we will be punished if we return empty-handed. I humbly beg you to allow us to tour the temple. Bowing down before the prince asked the head guard. The prince realized that these people were unlikely to get away from them, so let them inspect the temple. The only thing is, if Duncan isn't in the temple, I'll have to demand an explanation from Prince Nathan, Roland warned. Look, why don't we screw that temple? I don't think we should mess with a warrior prince. Let's just tell Nathan that we searched the temple and found nothing. One of the guards whispered in his commander's ear. Your Highness, since you have confirmed that Duncan is not here, we dare not disturb you any further. Nathan's men bowed to Prince Roland and hurriedly left the temple. Where have you been disappearing all this time? How many times have I told you not to mess with the imperial family, and you still chose to be with the warrior prince? General Grante shouted indignantly at his daughter. Already the whole town knows you're getting ready to get engaged to him. The general was extremely angry with his daughter, so he locked her in the house for 2 weeks. The faithful Ingrid was always by the girl's side. I can't stay in this house tonight. There will be a lantern festival in the evening. There will be a fireworks show in the square. If I miss it, I'll have to wait until next year, Heidi said with sadness in her voice. Then I suggest you do this. I'll put on your clothes and disguise myself as you, and you slip out of the house unnoticed and enjoy the festivities. I didn't want to go out today anyway, Ingrid suggested to the girl. Heidi hugged her friend tightly. She was grateful for her help. Heidi also had to disguise herself so no one would recognize her and report to her father that she was at the party. The girl was pleased that she had managed to attend the Lantern Festival. She had been waiting for this event for a whole year. In the square, Heidi encountered a belligerent prince. What's with your makeup? Although I've already heard from the guards that you look a little weird today, seeing you, I still can't stop laughing. Hiding his smile, the prince said to the girl, That's none of your business. And by the way, what are you doing here? Did the guards tell you I was here? Heidi asked. I just wanted to enjoy the Lantern Festival with you. The prince confessed to the girl. Look at that. Isn't that the warrior prince? And who's that ugly woman next to him? Didn't he recently pray for a happy marriage to Heidi Grante? Why is he walking around with another woman now? Whispered the girls behind Heidi's back. Let's get away from here first, or my reputation will be ruined again, suggested the prince to the girl. Okay, come on. I'll show you a place where we won't be disturbed, Heidi said and took the prince's hand. Heidi led the prince to the gates of the city. There was a beautiful view of the fireworks. From the high fence, a man in a black mask was watching the girl through the window. He was firmly convinced that Heidi had not dared to disobey her father, so she stayed at home. Heidi Grante, this is your last day, the masked man whispered and drew his sword from its sheath. Someone unknown knocked out the hapless assassin with a single blow from the palm of his hand. The man in the black mask fell unconscious to the ground. Ingrid heard a noise outside the window. She looked out into the yard and saw no one. Ingrid thought she was just imagining things. It's getting late, so I'll have my men escort you home, said the prince to the girl. One of his shadow guards ran to Roland and told him that the assassin who tried to kill Ingrid had just been captured. Unfortunately, the assassin had killed himself, so he was not interrogated. But that can't be. Who would want to harm Ingrid? She has no enemies who would want to kill her, Heidi exclaimed. Wait, they probably wanted to kill me. Ingrid wore my clothes and stayed home, covering for me. Perhaps the killer mistook her for me. Suddenly realized the girl. This is the thing I found on the killer's body! The guard held out a long pin to Roland. Such a delicate item is in the possession of members of the imperial court. Urgently find out who this pin belongs to, ordered the emperor. The very next day, a guard reported to the prince that this jade pin had been given to consort Meriden by the emperor a month ago. And what are you going to do with the information you've gotten? Asked the prince to Heidi. The girl answered him that she wanted to talk to the consort personally. I can't invite a consort into my house for no reason. She is, after all, my brother's wife. Without a good reason, she won't come here. Roland explained to the girl. I remember she once wanted me to check her health. You can invite her in under that pretext, Heidi suggested. On the way to the prince's mansion, consort Meriden thought about the reason for the sudden invitation. Heidi had refused to check on her health before, but now she had specifically invited her to the prince's mansion. Had she finally thought it over and decided to please the consort? The war prince and Mistress Heidi are waiting for you in this room. Only consort Meriden is allowed in here. The guard bowed to the consort in a courteous bow. As soon as the consort entered the room, a sword fell at her feet. The woman screamed in fright. Your ladyship, if you were afraid of a thrown sword, where did you get the nerve to ask your man to kill me with it? Heidi asked the woman. I don't know what you're talking about now, the consort exclaimed incredulously. I assume this item is familiar to you? Heidi showed the woman a jade pin. This jade pin was given to me by the emperor. Where did you get it from? The consort wondered. Someone tried to kill me last night, and I found this pin on the killer. Since you confirmed that it belongs to you, I assume you're involved. Heidi explained to the woman. Heidi Grante, don't slander me. This jade pin really belongs to me, but I lost it 2 weeks ago. All the servants in my palace can confirm it. You shouldn't accuse me of something I didn't do. The consort exclaimed indignantly. The woman tried to leave the room, but the prince's men blocked her way. Martial Prince, are you trying to illegally arrest the emperor's wife in your mansion? The consort asked in a voice ringing with anger. Don't misunderstand. I only want to return your item to you. If you really accidentally lost this pin, you should be more careful, or else someone will want to take advantage of you again. Roland handed the woman her jade pin. If you think you can get away with this easily, you are sorely mistaken, the consort exclaimed and left the room. I don't think consort is involved in the assassination attempt. She's really not a nice person, but she's not that careless. If she really sent someone to kill you, she would never give the assassin such prominent evidence. The prince concluded, You're right. But then the next question arises. Who could have framed consort Meriden? Heidi asked thoughtfully. Prince Nathan was approached by his shadow guard and told that consort Meriden had left Prince Roland's manor with an angry expression on her face. It was the perfect plan after all. Nathan had managed to provoke a conflict between the consort and Roland. Now we can take a step back and watch consort Meriden take care of Roland for me. With a sly smile, Nathan muttered, Your lordship, the person who stole your jade pin is just as disgusting as the warrior prince with Heidi. In my opinion, both of them don't even care if you planned it or not. They just want to vilify you. Resented the consort's devoted maid. There's talk that Prince Roland and Heidi are very close. Let's spread unseemly rumors about the girl. After all, Heidi is unmarried. If they start gossiping about her, she will surely be despised by everyone, suggested the maid. There's already a lot of unseemly rumors about these two. I need to drive a wedge between them. Then I can defeat one by one, said consort Meriden to the maid. We need to find out which man Heidi Granta is still close to besides the warrior prince. I have heard that Louis consults her often, but he works for the prince, the maid said thoughtfully. Well, that's even better. Find someone to spread rumors about Louis and Heidi. Have that person use the dirtiest words possible. Let's see if the prince really does trust Heidi as much as he's showing it, Meriden said with a malicious grin. A panting Ingrid flew into Heidi's room. Ingrid said that she had been in the town square recently and had heard people gossiping about her. There was a rumor that Heidi was in a relationship with Louis. I can't even find the cultural words to retell you what the gossipers say. They say obscene things about you. If the warrior prince finds out about this, he won't leave a single living spot on Louis. Ingrid, then I should hurry. We need to resolve this misunderstanding as quickly as possible, Heidi exclaimed. In the doorway of her house, Heidi faced Louis. Stay away from me, shouted Louis and held the sack out in front of him. The girl was surprised at his behavior. Had the rumor reached him in time? Louis explained to the girl that he didn't know about any rumor and that the bag contained his old clothes that he wanted to sell at the market. Roland appeared on the doorstep. Your Highness, have you heard aloud of me and Louis yet? The girl asked the prince. I've heard that, but I don't believe it. How can you like a jerk like Louis? I suggest you stop these rumors. Let's get even closer, suggested the prince, looking intently into the girl's eyes. But this is only a temporary solution to the problem. We should think of something more fundamental. The girl objected to him. Fundamental, you say? Are you really suggesting we kill Louis? The prince looked intently at his attending physician. That's not what I was telling you just now. I mean, we can solve the problem with Louis's girlfriend, then people won't gossip about us anymore, said Heidi to the prince. Sounds reasonable. Then I'll have people send out an ad around the capital for girls on a blind date. You've got the right idea. We'll be sure to find Louis a suitable match. The prince praised the girl. Don't you want my opinion on that? Louis pretended to weep bitterly. Your Highness, word is that the warrior prince is going to arrange a blind date for his attending physician Louis to eradicate the rumors about him and Heidi, reported the guard to Nathan. Send Beverly over there. Have her seduce this Louis. Order her to marry him. Then we'll have a spy in the enemy camp. We'll know everything Roland does. Nathan ordered the guard. And where's my name on this ad? How do the girls know they're supposed to meet me blind? Louis asked in an indignant voice. Don't worry, it's written down in the bottom left-hand corner. In fact, you don't have to worry about anything. Other people will take care of your dating. The guy registering the girls explained to the doctor. If not me, who's going to take the girls? Louis resented. I'll be doing the girls. Since I was the initiator, I should help with the organization, exclaimed Heidi, appearing seemingly out of nowhere. And why are you wearing that hat? Asked Louis. The girl confessed that she was afraid of drawing undue attention to herself. If she was seen near Louis, rumors would spread around town again. There was just a huge crowd of girls at the registration. Is it true that our forms will be personally checked by the warrior prince? One of the girls asked. It doesn't matter if I can get through or not. The important thing is that I get the form back. After all, it will still have the prince's scent on it, the other girls exclaimed delightedly. I hasten to disappoint you, but the prince will not be checking your forms. Heidi had absolutely no idea why these girls were acting so strangely. What did the prince have to do with them going on a blind date with Dr. Louis? But I came here for the prince's signature. I was told that the prince would personally sign my form, shouted a girl from the crowd. Wait, did you really come here for the prince? Heidi asked. Who else would it be for? The prince is so sweet and charming. He has beautiful eyes and hair, shouted the girls. But his heart is engaged. Have you forgotten that? Heidi Granta was able to win the prince's favor. What a pity that she was the one who got the heart of such a beautiful man. She probably won him over with her charm. There was a loud outcry from one girl. She's not as charming as you think. She's just overconfident. Thinks the prince loves her just because of one look she throws her way. I don't think the prince even knows her. She's just making it up. The other girl echoed her. Is it inappropriate to say something like that right to my face? Heidi asked, and took off her hat. Let me tell you this. All of this is only for Louis's sake. And the prince you're so obsessed with won't even show up, let alone review these forms. I'll be the only one checking them. If you have ulterior motives, you'd better leave right now. And I only came here for Louis. You can call me Beverly. I want to fill out a form. A pretty girl approached Heidi. Of course you do. You'll be able to meet Louis as early as this afternoon. Heidi was glad that there was at least one girl who was here for the doctor. When Heidi arrived home, she told Roland that she had chosen 9 candidates for Louis to take turns dating. From her seat, Heidi could watch Louis's date. He was now dating Christina. She was the 7th of 9 candidates. That girl's not right for me. She's too straightforward, Louis exclaimed after the date. The guard brought in an 8th candidate. This girl's name was Beverly. Is it really you? Louis exclaimed in surprise when he saw Beverly on the threshold of the room. I didn't expect Beverly to turn out to be Louis's childhood friend. Heidi was delighted at the coincidence. Heidi noticed that there were feelings between Louis and Beverly. The boy looked at the girl with loving eyes. And I think Louis has already made his choice, Heidi told Roland. It doesn't matter who he chooses as long as he's happy, replied the prince to the girl. How do you feel after meeting all the girls? Look only at yourself. What are you embarrassed about? I already know you picked Beverly for yourself, don't I? Heidi asked Louis when his interaction with Beverly was over. Actually, besides Beverly, I've fallen in love with one other girl, Louis confessed. Besides Beverly, Christina caught my eye. She won me over with her straightforwardness. I like open people who don't hide their feelings and emotions. Then so be it. Consider your decision carefully and make a choice. The prince advised his physician. The next day, the prince invited Beverly into his study. He personally wanted to have a word with the girl. Did you invite me for a private conversation to give me some instructions? Beverly asked the prince. No, I just wanted to ask you something. Do you feel close to me? Honestly, I've been thinking about you since I saw you yesterday. I like you, and I want to know if you feel similarly towards me, said the prince to the girl. If you reciprocate my feelings, Louis won't be a hindrance to us. Why would he suddenly fall in love with me? Is it because he already knows about me and now he's probing? Beverly thought to herself fearfully. Your Highness, shame on you for stealing love from your subordinate. A furious Heidi burst into the room. Heidi, how dare you barge in here and interrupt us? The prince asked the girl. I'm already here, so what? Just a little while ago you were talking sweetly to me, and now you're giving your heart to someone else, Heidi asked with her chin up. It's none of your business, the prince shouted irritably. Are they really fighting over me? Does that mean I look just adorable? Beverly wondered. Beverly and Louis are childhood friends. How dare you separate them? At least ask her what she thinks about it? Heidi jabbed a finger at Beverly. I like Louis, hotly exclaimed Beverly. Well, I love him. In fact, I only came here for him. Of course, it will be better if I marry a warrior prince. I'll get a high position and wealth. And I won't have to be afraid of Prince Nathan anymore, Beverly confessed unexpectedly. Is that what you really want? Asked the girl as Louis entered. Louis, what are you doing here? Beverly wondered. It was a trap. You, like most girls, only came here for the prince. We played out this skit in front of you to get ourselves out, Heidi explained to the girl. No, that's not true. Let me explain. I really came here for Louis. Beverly stammered half a word. Just what? I'm interested to hear what your excuse is for this situation, said Louis to the girl. Your Highness, please forgive me! I don't know what came over me! Beverly burst into tears and fell to her knees in front of the prince. Louis, since she lied to you, you can decide for yourself what to do with her, said the prince to his attending physician. Louis didn't want to see Beverly again, so he ordered her out. Bring Christina in, but there's no need to do any tests. I don't want to get into an awkward situation again, said Louis to Heidi. Come on, we've already come very far. Don't worry, everything will be fine this time. Let's test the next girl. Let me show you how ugly the adult world is. Heidi patted Louis on the shoulder. Christina entered the room. Your Highness, what can I do for you? Do you want to tell me who Louis has chosen? The girl asked. The prince asked her if she felt an affinity for him. Please forgive me for refusing. I only came here for Mr. Louis and have no interest in you. By the way, I think Louis himself and Mrs. Heidi are hiding behind that curtain, Christina admitted. How did you know? Heidi asked, opening the curtain. The whole capital knows that the warrior prince loves you. How can he fall in love with me at first sight? Christina asked. So, you really came here for Louis? Heidi asked. If that is so, then I must propose to you, said Louis to the girl. Christina objected to him that it was too early for a proposal. After all, they don't know each other at all. Yes, we've seen you a couple times. I really like you, and I just passed the test. But what did you do for our relationship? In order to marry me, you have to first pass a physical fitness test, a cooking test, and more. Christina raged. I never thought a blind date would end like this. Heidi confessed to Roland when things cooled down. Okay, you helped test those two girls, so I'll honor any request you make. What do you want me to do? Heidi asked the prince. I want you to spend the whole day with me, Roland admitted. You mean you're asking me out on a date? Heidi clarified. I was so beautiful that many girls liked me when I was a man, but I didn't think about it after I regained my identity. I'm so charming that I was able to win your heart, said Heidi, leaning over the prince. Your Highness, confess. Have you been in love with me for a long time? Heidi asked the blushing prince. What if I said yes to you? The prince replied to the girl, much to her surprise. In surprise, Heidi even flinched away from the prince. Roland grabbed her arm, preventing her from leaving. I think our relationship is moving too fast. I'm not ready for that, Heidi admitted. I just want to spend the whole 24 hours with you. Do you have to get ready for that? The prince asked the girl. All right, I'll come with you. Let's start our day trip right now. I'll store with you, eat with you, drink with you, basically do whatever you want. The girl agreed. General Grante was having dinner on the balcony of his favorite restaurant. Looking out the window, he saw a couple strolling in love. The lovers were tenderly holding hands. As he looked closer, the general realized that his daughter Heidi was walking through the city with her prince in her arms. How many times can you do this? I've already told her several times not to get involved with this man. She absolutely doesn't realize the danger she's putting herself in. The general thought to himself, I've asked her how many times not to go out with the prince, and she still disobeyed me. Now she's defiantly going shopping with the prince. Does she really want more rumors? The enraged general ran out of the restaurant into the street. Why don't we go to a restaurant for dinner? Suggested the prince to the girl. Heidi liked the idea very much, as she had eaten practically nothing since the morning. As soon as the lovers entered the restaurant, the waiter immediately ran up to them. The girl ordered herself a tofu pudding. The waiter brought out the tofu pudding meant for Heidi from the kitchen. Suddenly, a man in a black mask ran to the waiter and shoved him. The plate of pudding tofu wobbled on the tray. The man in the black mask picked up the plate of tofu and carefully put it back down. The waiter wondered why this strange man was hiding his face on such a hot day. Is the tofu pudding you ordered tasty? The prince asked the girl. Haven't you ever tasted it? The girl wondered. The prince confessed to her that he had never gone to such establishments before. Well, since you've never tasted it, why don't I feed you? The girl suggested, and held out a spoonful of tofu to the prince. Roland froze for a second. He wasn't used to showing his feelings in front of everyone. This all seems strange, of course, but I can't say no to her. The prince thought and reached for a spoonful of tofu. As soon as the prince swallowed the tofu, he immediately felt weakness in his entire body. I have to go to the restroom! Exclaimed the prince, jumping up from his seat. Did the prince eat something wrong? Everything was fine until he tasted my pudding tofu. Is it really about him? The girl thought to herself as she looked at the dish that had been brought to her. The girl took the plate and brought it to her nose. Heidi smelled the strong odor of laxatives. I don't like sharing a meal with anyone, so I dare say I was the intruder's target, the girl thought to herself. Heidi, I need an examination right away, the prince said to the girl and collapsed on top of her. Heidi ordered the waiter to get the room ready. Heidi helped the prince to the bed and gently laid him down. She needed to examine him as soon as possible. Your Highness, are you all right? A startled general burst into the room. And what is it you do in broad daylight? The general shouted when he saw his daughter sitting on the prince's bed. Father, what are you doing here? Heidi wondered. Why are you so surprised? Did I prevent them from having fun? The general asked his daughter. Father, what are you talking about? The prince has diarrhea and I'm examining him. Since you are here, help me, the girl asked. By the way, what is that in your hands? The girl asked, noticing a cup with a hot drink in her father's hands. It's medicine. Good thing I had it with me. Quickly let the prince drink it, replied the girl's father. How come you carry diarrhea medicine with you? Heidi wondered again. The general admitted to her that he had also suffered from diarrhea a few days ago, and the doctor had prescribed the medicine. The remnants of the medicine were left in his pocket. Get the prince drunk on this medicine, and when you're done, come out to me for a moment. I need to talk to you. The general asked his daughter. I've warned you many times, warned you to stay away from the emperor family members. Why are you still with him? You know there are various rumors about you around the city, right? Her father asked Heidi. And I haven't done anything wrong. Why should I care what people say about me? Heidi answered the question with a question. You must remember you're not married yet. How can you take your reputation so lightly? The general irritably grabbed his daughter by the shoulders. A small pouch fell out of his pocket. What's this? Asked the girl, taking the pouch in her hands. The substance in this pouch is very similar in odor to what was added to my food. Father, did you really put laxatives in my tofu? Now I see why you were here and even brought the medicine. The girl's indignation was unbounded. I just wanted you to get diarrhea and not have the energy to continue your date. Who would have thought you would decide to feed the prince your food? Confessed the girl's father. Father, didn't you think you might have ruined the prince's health with your actions? The girl asked indignantly. I can't understand. Who do you care more about, your own father or the warrior prince? Did you not think that me worrying about you is also affecting my health negatively? Asked the general. Wait, you've fallen in love with the prince, haven't you? Suddenly realized the general. This is my personal business. It's absolutely none of your business, shouted the flushed girl. Fine, do what you want. But since you won't listen to me, don't ask for help when you regret your decision. The general exclaimed and stormed out of the restaurant. When the girl entered the prince's room, he was sitting on the bed. Heidi realized from the look on his face that Roland had heard her conversation with his father. I apologize to you on behalf of my father. He just wanted to play a joke on me and didn't mean to hurt you. I pray you will spare him for such foolishness. Heidi knelt down in front of the prince. If you want my forgiveness, you must do something for me, said the prince to the girl. Suddenly, Roland took Heidi by the chin and kissed her gently on the lips. Now apology accepted, whispered Roland. No, what a creep! He took advantage of the situation yesterday to kiss me. What kind of a decent man does that? Heidi thought to herself as she replayed the kiss with the prince over and over in her head. Suddenly, the prince entered the girl's room and told her that he had some matters to discuss with her. We found very little evidence of the man who tried to kill you more than once. The reason I decided to set up a blind date for Louis is because I assumed the killer would send his spies, the prince told the girl. The prince also shared that he had ordered shadow guards to keep an eye on everyone present that day. Roland managed to get word to Beverly to go to Prince Nathan's estate immediately after the date. Prince Nathan has always seen me as a rival, so he does have a reason to kill me. The last assassin wore consort Merridin's jade pin, but she denies involvement. I think it was Nathan who stole the pin and framed the consort. But it won't be easy to convince the Emperor that Prince Nathan is behind all the crimes simply because Beverly works for him, Heidi remarked. I have ordered the shadow guards to bring Beverly to my estate. By interrogating her, we will know if Prince Nathan is guilty or not. If you wish, you can come with me. That way you can find out for yourself who the assassination attempt on you is, suggested the prince to the girl. Well, their plan wasn't meant to be. One of the shadow guards told them that Beverly was missing. It turns out the girl never returned to her home, and no one knows where she is at the moment. Why is she missing now? Did someone decide to cover their tracks? The prince thought to himself. A servant came into the room and told Roland that his brother Nathan wanted to see him. And why did he come here? Has he started running some kind of game? Heidi asked the prince in a whisper. Roland, hello! Ah, and Mrs. Heidi is here. How are you doing? Nathan addressed the girl. Roland didn't want his brother interacting with Heidi, so he abruptly cut him off with a question. The man was curious as to why his brother had decided to visit. I came here to apologize to you, Nathan admitted with his head bowed. Beverly is my maid, and a few days ago she went on a blind date with Lewis. But I hear she took wishful thinking that she could marry you. I am to blame for her inappropriate behavior. I hope you won't be angry with me for it. I have punished her, and you will never see her again. I want to assure you that you will literally never see her again. Shit, he killed her! Roland's mind raced. You apologized. Now you can leave, Roland said irritably to his brother. Mrs. Heidi, thank you for fixing my back. And I'm sorry I had to bother you so many times. I will send a gift later, and I hope you will accept it. I'll see you again. Smiling at the girl, Prince Nathan said, Damn, he deliberately said those words in front of Roland. Now the prince will definitely be extremely angry with me. The girl thought to herself fearfully, Heidi, have you helped him a few times? Didn't I warn you and tell you to stay away from him? Exclaimed Roland as soon as his brother left the room. He's a patient, and I'm a doctor. If I hadn't helped him, he could have blackened my name. What's more, I didn't know he was the man behind all these crimes, the girl explained. Even if you didn't know that he's a rather treacherous person, you shouldn't have approached him and treated his back. I mean, you saw him naked, resented Roland. You shouldn't attribute something that didn't happen. Nathan was half naked during the procedure. I only saw his torso. The girl began to justify herself. Heidi, I rushed here to bring you home. Your father demands it. A panting Ingrid ran into the room. Your father intends to marry you off, so he decided to set you up on a blind date, narrated Ingrid. But I don't want to get married, the girl exclaimed in amazement. Heidi did not know how else to explain to her father not to interfere in her personal affairs. She understood that he cared, but Heidi decided that if she was to be a spouse, it would only be to Prince Roland.